Chapter 1. After the apocalypse, I was reborn. Pain, excruciating pain, the searing agony enveloped Zhang Yi entirely. This was not merely a feeling, it was a stark reality that transpired around him. At that moment, he found himself mercilessly trampled by those friends and neighbors he once trusted and aided, fists and clubs raining down upon him. In this world ravaged by scarcity, they disregarded the assistance Zhang Yi had offered them and turned against him. In his final moments, he faintly saw his idol, Feng Yuqing, standing behind the crowd, her expression pitiful as she cried out, "It was I who urged him to open the door. You must allocate a larger share of supplies to me." It was this woman who deceived Zhang Yi into opening the door, leading to his demise. Zhang Yi gazed at her, his eyes brimming with hatred and regret. He could only blame himself for being foolish and too kind-hearted, allowing himself to become a stepping stone for others in this desolate world. He ardently wished for a chance to start anew. This time, he would show no mercy to anyone and live solely for himself. Soon, Zhang Yi's vision darkened, and he lost consciousness. However, in the next moment, he abruptly opened his eyes, sitting up from the sofa. The hellish scenes he had just endured, along with the horrific pain, were vividly etched in his memory. Gasping for breath, he quickly became drenched in sweat. What is happening? Was I not slain by those savage neighbors? Regaining his composure, Zhang Yi began to survey his surroundings. This place was familiar to him. It was his own home. The unexpectedly comfortable temperature in the air struck him as odd. For in December 2050, the blue planet had been affected by the explosion of a supernova 500,000 light-years away, ushering in a global Cambrian storm. Temperatures plummeted worldwide, and in Tianhai City, where Zhang Yi lived, the daily temperature hovered between -60 and 70 degrees. A blizzard had persisted for a month, engulfing the entire city. Reports indicated that in northern Huaghua, temperatures had plummeted to a terrifying -100 degrees, with the earth buried beneath ice and snow. Countless species faced mass extinction, and over 95% of humanity perished in this calamity. Zhang Yi stood up and retrieved a bottle of water from the refrigerator, gulping down more than half of it. Though the water was cold, to him, it felt like ambrosia. In the apocalypse, the only way to procure water was to venture outside and risk freezing to death while collecting snow to melt it. Such endeavors often led to tragic ends. After finishing the water, Zhang Yi glanced at his phone. The screen displayed the date, November 12th. There remained a full month until the apocalypse struck. It seems I have been reborn. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Yi quickly comprehended what had transpired. The experiences of that month could not have been a dream, especially the torment of being torn apart far too vivid to be imagined. Raising his head, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for surviving. Simultaneously, a fierce glimmer flashed in his eyes. He clearly remembers those who were responsible for his demise in his past life. In this lifetime, he is determined to live well, refusing to show any compassion towards those beasts. Moreover, ensuring his own safety is paramount, and he must seek brutal revenge against those who wronged him. However, Zhang Yi's immediate concern is to devise a strategy for surviving in the impending apocalypse that is set to arrive in a month. His living conditions are relatively decent. Orphaned at a young age, he inherited a spacious 120-square-meter apartment in Tianhai City. He also possesses savings exceeding 2 million, a sum that would be considered quite ample in ordinary times. Yet, with the advent of the apocalypse, a severe scarcity of resources will plague the world. The modest amount of money he currently holds will not suffice for long. After all, surviving alone demands an abundance of provisions. Given the opportunity to prepare in advance, Zhang Yi not only wishes to survive, but hopes to maintain a certain quality of life in the future. He must balance food and entertainment, otherwise, prolonged isolation would inevitably lead to mental collapse. Additionally, acquiring weaponry is essential. Only then can he safeguard his well-being and execute his vengeance upon his neighbors. At that moment, a glimmer of white light suddenly appeared before Zhang Yi. Assuming his right, I was playing tricks on him, he rubbed it gently. However, an odd thought unexpectedly surged through his mind. It seemed as if this beam of white light was an intrinsic part of him, and information regarding it flooded his consciousness. With a mere thought, his awareness was instantly drawn into the white light. Upon entering, he discovered an immense, ethereal space enveloped in a blinding whiteness. The expanse was unfathomably vast, filled only with boundless blankness. Is this an alternate dimension? He pondered. Evidently, my rebirth has endowed me with some extraordinary abilities. A surge of joy welled up within Zhang Yi. It appeared that exposure to gamma rays had mutated his body, granting him extraordinary powers. With this vast space at his disposal, storing resources for the impending apocalypse will become remarkably convenient. Yet, Zhang Yi yearned to uncover the extent of this space's capacity and whether there were restrictions on the types of objects he could store. His consciousness promptly returned to his room, and he began experimenting by placing household items into the dimension. He started with a teacup and a basin, both of which easily slipped into the void. He then attempted to fit larger appliances within. Television, refrigerator, washing machine, computer, air conditioner, and vacuum cleaner all were effortlessly accepted by the white space. Furthermore, with a mere thought, Zhang Yi could retrieve these items from the dimension. However, objects that were subject to significant external forces or were not independently existing posed a challenge for storage. For instance, when he tried to pry a floorboard from the ground, there was no response whatsoever. It seems this alternate space operates under many rules. I must explore them gradually. Nonetheless, merely having this capacity to store objects grants me the ability to hoard an immense quantity of resources. He licked his lips, a bold plan forming in his mind. Zhang Yi served as a supervisor at the Walmart warehouse in South China. As the largest supermarket chain in the world, Walmart boasted an extensive inventory. In China, it operated 3 colossal warehouses located in Central, South, and North China. Among these, the South China warehouse was particularly formidable. Completed in 2040, it stretched 1,500 meters in length and 720 meters in width, covering over 1 million square meters, making it the largest warehouse in the world. It had once been hailed by the president of Walmart's Greater China region as the 8th wonder of the world. Of course, while the world officially recognizes only 7 wonders, the title of the 8th wonder is self-appointed, with thousands claiming the distinction. Nevertheless, the scale and storage capacity of the South China warehouse indeed set it apart in the realm of global warehousing. The supplies within could sustain the consumption of millions across several cities for an entire week. This meant that if Zhang Yi could entirely deplete the inventory of a single warehouse and transport it to his own space, he would possess enough resources not just for a lifetime, but for 10 lifetimes. Most importantly, Walmart maintained stringent quality control. The warehouse harbored no subpar brands. Every item, whether food, daily necessities, or luxury goods, was of reputable quality. If Zhang Yi could empty a Walmart warehouse, he would not only be free from worries about resources in the face of an impending apocalypse, but would also lead a life of leisure. As the warehouse supervisor, he was intimately familiar with every shelf, surveillance system, and staff schedule within the facility. Thus, the task of clearing the warehouse would pose no challenge to him. Having resolved his plan, a sense of ease washed over Zhang Yi. Just then, his stomach protested with a loud growl. He glanced at his takeout of braised chicken rice on the table. Pondering for a moment, he ultimately chuckled and shook his head, opting to forego the delivery. With the apocalypse just a month away, I must indulge in all the delicious food while I still can. There will be no opportunities later. Why be so stingy with myself? Having endured a month of cold and hunger, he longed for a warm, delectable meal. What purpose did money serve? After the world ends, it would merely turn to waste paper. It was far better to spend it all now rather than squander it. Zhang Yi turned with a flourish, determined to seek out a high-end restaurant he had once hesitated to visit, ready to indulge in a splendid feast. Chapter 1. After the apocalypse, I was reborn. Pain, excruciating pain. A searing agony enveloped Zhang Yi entirely. This was not merely a sensation, but a stark reality that unfolded before him. At that moment, he found himself mercilessly trampled by those friends and neighbors he had once trusted and aided, fists and sticks raining down upon him like a relentless storm. In this world ravaged by scarcity, they showed no regard for the assistance he had once offered. They turned against him. In his dying moments, he caught a glimpse of the woman he revered, Fang Yuqing, standing at the rear of the crowd, her demeanor pitiable as she shouted, "It was I who urged him to open the door. You must share the supplies with me." It was this very woman who deceived Zhang Yi into unlocking the door, ultimately leading to his demise. He gazed at her, his eyes brimming with hatred and regret. He could only blame his own foolishness and kindness. which had rendered him a stepping stone for others in this desolate world. How he longed for a chance to start anew. This time, he would not show mercy to anyone. He would live solely for himself. Soon, darkness engulfed him, and he lost consciousness. However, in the next instant, he jolted awake, sitting upright on the sofa. The hellish scenes he had just endured, that dreadful pain, were still vivid in his mind. Zhang-Yi gasped for breath, his body quickly drenched in sweat. What is happening? Was I not killed by those monstrous neighbors? Regaining his composure, Zhang-Yi began to survey his surroundings. This place was familiar. It was his own home. The comfortable temperature in the air struck him as remarkably strange. For in December 2050, the blue star had been affected by the explosion of a supernova 500,000 light-years away, ushering in a global Cambrian storm. Global temperatures plummeted, and in the city of Tianhai, where Zhang-Yi lived, the daily temperature hovered around -60 to 70 degrees, with blizzards burying the entire city for a month. It was said that in the northern regions of Huaghua, temperatures had even plummeted to a terrifying -100 degrees, entombing the earth in ice and snow. A wide-scale extinction of various life forms ensued, with over 95% of humanity perishing in this catastrophe. Zhang-Yi rose to his feet and retrieved a bottle of water from the refrigerator, gulping down more than half in one go. Though the chilled water was frigid, to him in that moment, it was like nectar. In the apocalypse, the only way for people to obtain water was to venture outside, braving the extreme cold to gather snow and melt it into water. Such endeavors could easily lead to death by frostbite. After quenching his thirst, Zhang-Yi glanced at his phone. The display showed the date, November 12th. There was still a full month until the end of the world. It seems I have been reborn. Zhang-Yi took a deep breath, quickly grasping the situation. The experiences of that month could not have been a dream, especially the agonizing pain of being torn apart. It was far too real. He lifted his head, and after surviving this ordeal, his heart swelled with immense relief. Simultaneously, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes. He distinctly remembers those who caused his demise in his past life. In this new existence, he is determined to survive and will no longer harbor any kindness towards those vile beings. Moreover, ensuring his own safety is paramount. He must exact a fierce vengeance upon those wretches. However, at this moment, Zhang-Yi's primary concern is how to endure the impending apocalypse that is set to arrive in a month's time. His living conditions are relatively satisfactory. Having lost his parents at an early age, he inherited a spacious apartment in Tianhai City, measuring an impressive 120 square meters. His savings exceed 2 million, which, in ordinary times, would afford him a comfortable life. Yet, the advent of the apocalypse will precipitate a severe scarcity of resources worldwide. Relying solely on his limited funds will not sustain him for long. After all, surviving as an individual requires an abundance of supplies. With the opportunity to prepare in advance, Zhang-Yi aspires not only to survive, but also to maintain a certain quality of life in the future. He must consider both nourishment and entertainment. Otherwise, prolonged hardship will surely lead to a breakdown of his spirit. Additionally, weaponry is essential. Only then can he safeguard his well-being and fulfill his quest for vengeance against his neighbors. At that moment, a glimmer of white light suddenly appeared before Zhang-Yi. He rubbed his right eye, thinking it might be blurred. Yet, a peculiar thought surged within his mind. It seemed that this beam of light was an intrinsic part of him, and information about it flooded into his consciousness. With a mere thought, his awareness was instantly drawn into the radiant light. Upon entering, he discovered an immense, ethereal expanse of shimmering whiteness. The area was boundless, vast stretches of emptiness surrounding him. Is this an alternate dimension? He pondered. It appears that after my rebirth, I have acquired some extraordinary abilities. A wave of elation washed over Zhang-Yi. It seemed that exposure to gamma rays had induced a mutation in his body, bestowing upon him extraordinary powers. This immense space would make it far easier for him to store supplies for the impending apocalypse. However, Zhang-Yi was eager to ascertain how much he could store in this space and whether there were limitations on the objects he could collect. He swiftly returned his consciousness to his room and began experimenting by placing items from his home into the space. Initially, he started with a teacup and a basin, both of which were effortlessly absorbed. He then attempted to cram larger appliances inside televisions, refrigerators, washing machines, computers, air conditioners, and vacuum cleaners, all of which the white space welcomed without hesitation. With just a thought, Zhang Yi could retrieve any item from this ethereal realm. However, he discovered that objects subjected to substantial external forces, or those not existing independently, were challenging to incorporate into the space. For instance, when he attempted to pry a piece of flooring from the ground, there was no response. It seems this alternate dimension has numerous rules. I must explore them gradually. Nevertheless, the mere existence of this vast space for storing objects allows me to amass an abundance of resources. He licked his lips, a bold plan forming in his mind. Zhang Yi served as a supervisor at the Walmart warehouse in South China. As the largest supermarket in the world, Walmart boasts an extensive array of goods. In China, it operates 3 massive warehouses located in Central, South, and North China. The sheer size of these warehouses is astonishing, particularly that of the South China facility. Completed in 2040, it stretches 1,500 meters in length and 720 meters in width, encompassing an area of over 1 million square meters, making it the largest warehouse in the world. The president of Walmart's Greater China region once referred to it as the 8th wonder of the world. While the world officially recognizes only 7 wonders, the title of the 8th is self-assigned, with thousands claiming the honor. Nonetheless, the South China warehouse's area and storage capacity indeed reign supreme in the global logistics sector. Its stock can sustain the consumption needs of millions across several cities for an entire week. This implies that if Zhang Yi were to completely deplete the resources of a single warehouse and transport them into his own space, he would possess enough supplies to last not just a lifetime, but 10 lifetimes. Crucially, Walmart maintains stringent quality control. The warehouse is devoid of low-tier, obscure brands. Whether food, household items, or luxury goods, only reputable brands grace its shelves. Should Zhang Yi manage to empty a Walmart warehouse, not only would he be free from concerns about resources in the impending apocalypse, but he could also live in splendid comfort. As the warehouse supervisor, he was intimately familiar with every shelf, surveillance device, and staff schedule within the facility. Thus, emptying the warehouse would pose no challenge for him. With his mind made up, a wave of relief washed over Zhang Yi. Gurgle at that moment, his stomach protested audibly. He glanced at the yellow braised chicken rice he had purchased earlier. Pondering for a moment, he ultimately chuckled and shook his head, opting to forego the takeout. With the apocalypse looming in just a month, I must indulge in the delectable foods while I can otherwise. Opportunities will dwindle. Why should I be so miserly with myself? After enduring a month of cold and hunger, he longed for a warm, sumptuous meal. What purpose does money serve? After the end of the world, it would merely become worthless paper. It is far better to spend it all now, rather than let it go to waste. With a carefree turn, Zhang Yi resolved to seek out a high-end restaurant he had previously deemed too extravagant, eager to savor a delightful feast. Chapter 1. After the apocalypse, I was reborn. Pain, excruciating pain. An indelible agony enveloped Zhang Yi's entire being. This was not merely a sensation, but a stark, undeniable reality unfolding before him. At that moment, he found himself ruthlessly trampled by friends and neighbors whom he had once trusted and assisted, their fists and feet raining down upon him like a relentless storm. In this world ravaged by scarcity, they disregarded the kindness he had shown them, turning their wrath against him. As he hovered on the brink of death, he caught a glimpse of the woman he idolized, Feng Yuqing, standing at the back of the crowd, her demeanor pitiful as she shouted, "It was I who urged him to open the door. You must give me a larger share of the supplies." It was this very woman who deceived Zhang Yi into opening the door, leading to his demise. Zhang Yi gazed at her, his eyes brimming with hatred and regret. He could only blame himself for being naive and too kind-hearted, ultimately becoming a stepping stone for others in this apocalyptic world. He fervently wished for a chance to start anew. If given that opportunity, he would show no mercy to anyone, living solely for himself. Soon, darkness engulfed him, and he lost consciousness. Yet in the next moment, he abruptly opened his eyes, sitting up from the sofa. The hellish scene he had just endured and the horrific pain lingered vividly in his mind. Zhang Yi gasped for breath, his entire body quickly drenched in sweat. What on earth is happening? Was I not killed by those beasts of neighbors? Regaining his senses, Zhang Yi began to survey his surroundings. This place was familiar. It was his own home. The comfortable temperature in the air struck him as astonishingly peculiar. For in December of the year 2050, Blue Star was subjected to a global Cambrian storm triggered by the explosion of a supernova located 500,000 light-years away. Global temperatures plummeted, and in Tianhai City, where Zhang Yi resided, daily temperatures fell to a frigid 60 to 70 degrees below zero. A blizzard persisted for an entire month, engulfing the city. Reports indicated that in the northern regions of Huaihua, temperatures plummeted to an alarming 100 degrees below zero, burying the earth beneath ice and snow. A vast extinction of various life forms ensued, with over 95% of humanity perishing in this catastrophe. Zhang Yi rose to his feet and retrieved a bottle of water from the refrigerator, gulping down more than half in one go. Though the chilled water was frigid, to him, it was akin to ambrosia. During the apocalypse, the sole means of acquiring water was to venture outside, braving the extreme cold to scoop snow and melt it into water. Such endeavors often led to fatal consequences. After quenching his thirst, Zhang Yi glanced at his phone. The screen displayed the date, November 12th. There remained a full month until the advent of the apocalypse. It seems I have been reborn. Zhang Yi inhaled deeply, quickly comprehending the situation. The experiences of that month could not have been a mere dream, especially the visceral pain of dismemberment. It was far too real. Raising his head, Zhang Yi felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for being granted a second chance. Simultaneously, a fierce glint flickered in his eyes. He remembers distinctly the individuals responsible for his demise in the past. In this life, he is determined to survive, vowing never again to show kindness to those vile creatures. Moreover, under the assurance of his own safety, he must exact a fierce revenge upon those wretches. However, at this moment, Zhang Yi's foremost concern is how to endure the impending apocalypse that is set to arrive in a month. His living conditions are relatively comfortable. His parents passed away at a young age, leaving him with a property in Tianhai City, measuring an ample 120 square meters. He also possesses savings exceeding 2 million, which, in ordinary times, would be considered quite ample. Yet, with the advent of the apocalypse, a severe shortage of resources will ensue globally. The meager funds he holds will scarcely suffice for long. After all, survival demands an abundance of supplies. With the opportunity for early preparation, Zhang Yi not only wishes to survive, but also aspires for a certain quality of life in the future. He must balance sustenance and recreation, otherwise, prolonged deprivation would surely lead to a breakdown of his spirit. Additionally, acquiring weapons and equipment is essential. Only then can he ensure his safety and fulfill his quest for vengeance against his neighbors. At that moment, a glimmer of white light suddenly appeared before Zhang Yi's eyes. He initially thought his right eye had blurred, so he rubbed it gently. However, a peculiar thought surged within his mind. It seemed as though this white light was inherently a part of him, accompanied by information flooding into his consciousness. With a mere thought, his awareness instantly entered that beam of light. Upon entering, he discovered an immense, boundless white space. The area was unfathomably vast, filled only with expanses of blankness. Is this an alternate space? He pondered. It appears that my rebirth has endowed me with some extraordinary abilities. A surge of joy filled Zhang Yi's heart. It seemed that exposure to gamma rays had triggered a mutation in his body, granting him remarkable powers. This expansive space would greatly facilitate the storage of resources for the impending apocalypse. However, Zhang Yi sought to ascertain the capacity of this space and whether there were limitations on the objects he could store within it. His consciousness swiftly returned to his room, and he began experimenting with placing items from his home into the space. He started with a teacup and a basin, both of which were easily stored. Zhang Yi then attempted to fit larger appliances inside: a television, refrigerator, washing machine, computer, air conditioner, and vacuum cleaner. The white space welcomed all these items without hesitation. Furthermore, with a mere thought, he could retrieve anything from the space. However, objects that were subjected to considerable external force or were not standalone proved challenging to assimilate into the space. For instance, when he attempted to pry a piece of flooring from the ground, there was no response whatsoever. It seems this alternate space has many rules. I must gradually explore them. Nevertheless, The mere existence of this vast storage space enables me to amass an enormous quantity of resources. He licked his lips, a bold plan forming in his mind. Zhang Yi served as a supervisor at Walmart's warehouse in southern China. As the world's largest supermarket, Walmart boasts an extensive array of goods. In China, it operates 3 colossal warehouses located in central, southern, and northern regions. These 3 warehouses are impressively vast, particularly the one in southern China. Completed in 2040, it stretches 1,500 meters in length and 720 meters in width, encompassing over 1 million square meters, making it the largest warehouse in the world. It was once lauded by the president of Walmart Greater China as the 8th wonder of the world. While the world recognizes only 7 wonders, the 8th is often self-proclaimed, numbering in the thousands. Nonetheless, the area and storage capacity of the southern China warehouse indeed reigns supreme in the global logistics sector. The inventory within can supply the weekly consumption of millions across several cities. In essence, if Zhang Yi were to completely deplete the resources of a warehouse and transfer them into his own possession, he would not only be free from worries about supplies in the impending apocalypse, but could also indulge in a life of luxury for countless generations to come. Crucially, Walmart maintains stringent quality control, ensuring that the warehouse is devoid of subpar, generic products. Whether it be food, household items, or luxury goods, all are reputable brands with excellent reputations. If Zhang Yi could empty a Walmart warehouse, he would not only secure ample supplies for the end of days, but also lead a life of comfort. As the warehouse supervisor, he was intimately familiar with every shelf, surveillance system, and staff schedule. Thus, depleting the warehouse would pose no challenge for him. With his mind made up, Zhang Yi felt a wave of relief wash over him. Just then, his stomach grumbled in protest. He glanced at the yellow braised chicken rice he had purchased. After a moment of contemplation, he chuckled and shook his head, ultimately deciding against the takeout. With the apocalypse just a month away, it's essential to savor the delectable foods while I still can. Why be so frugal with myself? Having endured a month of cold and hunger, he yearned for warm, delicious food. What purpose does money serve? Once the world ends, it will merely be worthless paper. It is far better to spend it all now than to waste it. With a carefree turn, Zhang Yi set out to find a high-end restaurant he had previously been reluctant to visit, eager to indulge in a hearty meal. Chapter 2. The White Lotus. Zhang Yi stepped out of his home, greeted by a serene scene that radiated joy and contentment. Numerous parents accompanied their children, reveling in play at the community square, their faces adorned with blissful smiles. Yet, Zhang Yi was acutely aware that in merely a month, all of this would dissolve into mere illusions. He briskly walked out of the neighborhood, and not far beyond its confines lay a Michelin 3-star restaurant. A meal there would typically cost no less than 5,000 or 6,000 yuan, a sum Zhang Yi had always hesitated to spend. However, now he felt utterly unconcerned. Having returned from the brink of death, a grand celebration was in order. Upon entering the restaurant, Zhang Yi chose a table by the window and ordered the most extravagant dishes on the menu, along with a bottle of CH Lafite red wine. This extravagant feast quickly amounted to 50,000 yuan. Even the restaurant staff regarded him with ambiguous glances, assuming he must be a wealthy heir. After all, who but the affluent would indulge in such an opulent meal? Zhang Yi paid no heed to their speculations. Once the table was laden with delectable dishes, he began to devour them voraciously, perhaps due to the 6 months he had endured in a frozen apocalypse. The taste of such exquisite food moved him to the brink of tears. His dining manner became somewhat ferocious, stirring whispers among the other patrons. Yet, he remained indifferent to their chatter. He understood that in the face of impending doom, people could kneel and beg for a mere packet of instant noodles. In such dire times, civilization and morality would evaporate into nothingness. As Zhang Yi savored his meal, a woman passing by outside paused in her tracks. She was a vision of elegance, with flowing hair, exquisite makeup, and clad in Gucci heels, her arm draped over an LV handbag. This woman was none other than Fang Yuqing, the one who had orchestrated Zhang Yi's demise in a past life. Accompanying her was her close friend, Lin Kainan. As they strolled past the Michelin-starred restaurant, both women couldn't resist casting glances inside. Their hearts longed for such luxurious venues, yet their financial constraints barred them from indulgence. Nevertheless, this did not deter them from scrutinizing the interior, perhaps hoping to identify a rich heir worthy of their affections. To Fang Yuqing's astonishment, she spotted Zhang Yi within, an opulent spread of top-tier dishes before him. "Isn't that Zhang Yi? How could he afford to dine here?" she exclaimed in disbelief. Lin Kaining, equally taken aback, covered her mouth in surprise. "I had no idea he was so wealthy," she remarked, her gaze flickering with intrigue towards Fang Yuqing. "Yuqing, you're quite fortunate. The one pursuing you, it seems, is a hidden rich heir. Just look at that feast before him. It must be worth at least 50 or 60,000. Who but the affluent can afford such extravagance for a single meal?" Lin Kainen's tone carried a hint of envy, for she knew Zhang Yi had been pursuing Fang Yuqing for 2.5 years. However, Fang Yuqing had been keeping Zhang Yi in suspense, neither refusing nor accepting him. Fang Yuqing was a quintessential gold digger, always believing she could marry a high-quality rich second generation and live as a young lady. Yet, she hesitated to give up on Zhang, a modest man with a car and a house in Tianhai City. Thus, she had always regarded Zhang Yi as a backup option. Her principle regarding backups was simple: do not initiate, do not refuse, and do not take responsibility. Today, upon witnessing Zhang Yi enjoying a lavish meal worth tens of thousands alone, doubts began to creep into Fang Yuqing's mind. Could it be that Zhang Yi was, in fact, a concealed, rich second generation? Resting her chin on her hand, she pondered this possibility. The more she thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. After all, weren't there often such characters in television dramas? Those who, despite their wealth, pretended to be ordinary in the quest for true love. Fang Yuqing convinced even herself with this notion, her eyes sparkling with excitement. If that were true, it would save her considerable effort. After all, Zhang Yi had been pursuing her. She believed that with a mere nod, he would immediately propose. Lin Kaining, standing beside her, urged Yuqing, "Let's go in and find Zhang Yi." In truth, she had her eyes set on the delectable dishes laid out before them. This was a Michelin 3-star restaurant. After all, a place where ordinary folks might never have a chance to dine. Fang Yuqing hesitated briefly, but shook her head, saying, "Isn't that inappropriate? It might make him think I'm a materialistic woman. Let us wait outside and pretend we just happened to run into him." Fang Yuqing was no fool. She wouldn't lower herself for a mere meal. Even if Zhang Yi were indeed wealthy, she intended to maintain her goddess-like demeanor. Only then, when they were together in the future, could she effectively control Zhang Yi, ensuring he continued to be her devoted admirer. Thus, the two concealed themselves not far from the restaurant, awaiting Zhang Yi's emergence. After over an hour of dining, Zhang Yi, content, rubbed his round belly. The Michelin 3-star cuisine was rather average, but for someone who had just been reborn from a post-apocalyptic world, it was a meal that moved him deeply. Next, he planned to visit a nearby supermarket to purchase some supplies. This was to test the storage capabilities of the alternate space, preventing any issues in the future. Though he was confident in transporting goods from the Walmart warehouse, caution was always wise. After all, he had experienced hunger and could not afford any mishaps. Zhang Yi paid cheerfully, exiting the restaurant to the friendly smiles of the staff. Just then, a familiar voice rang out beside him. "Zhang Yi, what a coincidence!" Turning around, he was taken aback to see Fang Yuqing and Lin Kaining. Fang Yuqing tucked her hair behind her ear, deliberately showcasing her fair neck and pink earlobes. Zhang Yi couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. This was a classic ploy, a quintessential green tea maneuver designed to subtly stir a man's heart. Fang Yuqing, a master of both green tea and the pure white lotus persona, was undoubtedly skilled in this art. Regrettably, the Zhang Yi of today is no longer the naive devotee he once was. Not long ago, he was driven to the brink of death by this very woman, meeting an excruciatingly tragic fate. She even contemplated breaking Zhang Yi's ribs to brew a soup from his essence. Upon reflecting on this, Zhang Yi's gaze turned cold and menacing, a visceral manifestation of murderous intent. With the apocalypse looming, the act of ending her life would pose no moral quandary. Should he eliminate her? Fang Yuqing, feeling the chill emanating from Zhang Yi's stare, nervously inquired Zhang Yi. What is wrong with you? Quickly regaining his composure, Zhang Yi replied nonchalantly, It's nothing. I mistook you for someone else. He abruptly altered his course of thought. Allowing this woman to meet her demise so easily would be too lenient. Furthermore, taking her life now would likely lead to unavoidable legal repercussions, and he had no desire to find himself confined in a detention center when the end of days arrives. Instead, he would prefer to let her experience the despair of the apocalypse before ultimately orchestrating her demise. With foresight and ample time for preparation, Zhang Yi, armed with memories from his previous life, could devise countless methods to ensure her suffering. Thus, there was no immediate need to deal with her. The paramount concern now was to construct the most secure sanctuary, enabling him to survive comfortably amidst the impending chaos of the world. Chapter 3. Shopping and stockpiling. Zhang exhibited a marked indifference towards Fang Yuqing. Both Fang Yuqing and Lin Kainan sensed an underlying tension, yet mistakenly assumed that Zhang Yi was an invisible rich heir. Rather than feeling offended by his demeanor, they were drawn closer to him, believing that a wealthy individual could afford a touch of arrogance. Zhang Yi, were you dining at this restaurant just now? Lin Kainan remarked nonchalantly. Zhang Yi furrowed his brow slightly, perceiving her as no better than Fang Yuqing. Both were equally culpable in the past schemes that had wronged him. Zhang Yi replied coldly, his hands shoved into his pockets as he turned towards the supermarket. Fang Yuqing and Lin Kainan hurried to follow. Zhang Yi, where are you headed? Fang Yuqing inquired sweetly, a gentle smile gracing her lips. To the supermarket, Zhang Yi answered, his tone remaining frosty, tinged with impatience. Had it not been for his intention to let her experience the despair of a post-apocalyptic world, he would have been tempted to eliminate her then and there. Fang Yuqing exchanged a knowing glance with Lin Kainan and quickly added, What a coincidence. We were just planning to buy some things as well. It's right along the way. At this moment, Zhang Yi realized their sudden enthusiasm stemmed from witnessing him dining at a Michelin 3-star restaurant, leading them to mistakenly believe he was a wealthy heir. He could not be bothered to engage with them further and continued on his path toward the supermarket. Yet, the more aloof he became, the more convinced Fang Yuqing and Lin Kainan were of his affluence. After all, what justified such extravagance if he were not wealthy? The two women trailed closely behind him, with Fang Yuqing even leaning in nearer, occasionally reaching out to brush against him. Whenever Zhang Yi glanced her way, she would feign shyness, turning her head away, her cheeks flushed with a semblance of timidity. Zhang Yi silently scoffed. A masterful actress, indeed. If you were to pursue a career in film, an Oscar would surely be yours. Upon entering the supermarket, he grabbed a shopping cart and ventured inside, with Fang Yuqing and Lin Kainan hastily pushing their own carts to keep pace. Zhang Yi, were you dining with someone special? Fang Yuqing asked with a smile. Zhang Yi walked towards the food section, responding coldly, Is it not permissible for me to dine alone? Fang Yuqing's eyes brightened, and she quickly retorted, Oh no, that's not what I meant. I merely thought the items there were quite expensive and assumed you were treating someone. Lin Kainan could not resist interjecting, Zhang, your monthly salary is just over 10,000, right? That meal must have consumed half a year's worth of your earnings. It seems your family must provide you with a substantial allowance. Fang Yuqing shot Lin Kainan a fierce glare. Idiot, how could you ask such a thing? As a top-tier social climber, one of the cardinal rules was discuss emotions with the wealthy and finances with the poor. Realizing her blunder, Lin Kainan quickly attempted to rectify her mistake. I was just joking. After all, we are all good friends. Money truly does not matter. Yet, Zhang Yi remained entirely unresponsive to their prattle. He arrived at the food section, gazing at the dazzling array of products on the shelves, akin to entering a treasure trove. In his previous life, he had experienced the sensation of consuming a single packet of instant noodles over the course of 2 days, which had instilled in him an insatiable desire for food. Zhang Yi directly approached the shelves, indiscriminately tossing items into his shopping cart. Ham sausages, instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, and an assortment of condiments, all acquired in abundance. This spectacle left Fang Yuqing and Lin Kainan utterly astonished. Zhang Yi, why are you buying so much food? Are you going camping? They inquired, incredulously. Zhang Yi replied nonchalantly. However, Lin Kaining harbored doubts and whispered to Fang Yuqing, would a wealthy second-generation heir really eat this? Fang Yuqing also felt a twinge of uncertainty, yet the memory of that Michelin three-star meal lingered in her mind, preventing her from relinquishing the notion of Zhang Yi as a privileged heir. She hurried to Zhang Yi's side and eagerly offered, "Do you need any help?" With free labor presenting itself, Zhang Yi saw no reason to decline. Moreover, observing Fang Yuqing's feigned innocence stirred a vengeful thought within him. He had a month to prepare for the impending apocalypse. Constructing a perfect sanctuary to ensure his safety would not pose a challenge. As for supplies, he could procure them from the Walmart warehouse. Thus, he could secure an existence of absolute safety and comfort amidst the chaos of the apocalypse. He contemplated deliberately revealing to Fang Yuqing that he had stockpiled certain resources, anticipating that she would later come to him, pleading for assistance. The possibility of Fang Yuqing leaking his plans and attracting the ire of their insufferable neighbors was easily manageable. As long as his safe house was sturdy enough, he need not fear an assault. Rather, he could efficiently turn the tables on those insufferable neighbors. The thought of their frustration, helpless against him, brought a twisted smile to Zhang Yi's lips. Indeed, this was a viable option. Zhang Yi resolved to consult a security company about constructing such a safe house. If feasible, he would proceed with this plan. If not, he would retreat from the city to find a secluded wilderness to establish an underground refuge. This would be a prudent dual strategy. With a slight curve of his lips, he instructed, "Then you shall help me push the cart." Fang Yuqing quickly nodded in agreement. Zhang Yi also requested Lin Kaining to fetch another cart. Although both women were filled with skepticism, they complied with his orders. Zhang Yi procured a significant quantity of storable food, including instant noodles, ham sausages, cured meats, and canned goods. He even used a separate cart for fresh meat, fruits, vegetables, and live fish, eager to test whether his unique space had any special properties for preserving perishables. 3 carts were laden to the brim, with Zhang Yi assigning the cart filled with beef, lamb, and canned goods specifically to the 2 women, ensuring it weighed at least 400 to 500 pounds, leaving them perspiring profusely. Fang Yuqing expressed her discontent, pouting as she remarked, "Zhang Yi, how many people are meant to consume all this? Are you perhaps involved in some activity that you haven't disclosed to me?" Zhang Yi let out a cold chuckle and replied, "The heavens can be unpredictable. What if the world were to come to an end one day? I prefer to stockpile provisions for the days to come." Zhang Yi spoke nothing but the truth. It was implausible for anyone to believe him. This had been corroborated by a doctor surnamed Li in the past. Fang Yuqing took Zhang Yi's words as mere jest and burst into laughter, saying, "Oh, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. Why make such jokes? However, since you've assisted me so significantly today, you must treat me to a meal later." Her eyes sparkled with implication, as she anticipated that Zhang Yi would take her to dine at a Michelin 3-star restaurant. Zhang Yi's lips curled slightly. "All right, but I am quite busy lately and won't have much time. Perhaps next month." Fang Yuqing cheerfully replied, "That sounds great. It's a promise." Lin Kaining quickly joined in. Yes, let's all go together." The mere act of pushing a cart had earned her the prospect of a grand feast, and she was utterly delighted. Observing Lin Kaining's lack of awareness, Fang Yuqing shot her a glare, but Lin Kaining feigned ignorance. Zhang Yi proceeded to settle the bill, and the total expenditure exceeded 10,000. He paid without a flicker of an eye. It is important to note that in the apocalypse, such supplies could appreciate in value exponentially, perhaps even becoming priceless. For in that dire time, no amount of money may secure a morsel of food. Given the substantial quantity of his purchases, the supermarket willingly lent him a shopping cart. Unreservedly, he commanded the 2 women to assist him in transporting the items back home. Although he owned a car and could easily drive the supplies back, he saw no reason to forego the opportunity of free labor. Despite the 2 women constantly lamenting their fatigue, the promise of a lavish meal reignited their enthusiasm. Thus, the trio pushed 3 laden carts of supplies back to their neighborhood. Chapter 4. Ordering 500 banquets at a 5-star hotel. Zhang, accompanied by 2 companions, returned to the community with 3 large carts laden with supplies. Along the way, Numerous neighbors witnessed this scene and could not help but engage in hushed discussions. Zhang Yi, however, was indifferent to the attention. After all, the two women were already aware of his stockpiling, and the news was impossible to conceal. If his sole intention were to preserve his own existence, he could easily liquidate all his assets and retreat to a desolate place to construct an impregnable fortress. Yet, how could he exact revenge upon those neighbors who had gruesomely shattered him in his previous life? Until he eliminated those responsible, the torment in his heart would never dissipate. Thus, one of his plans for the apocalypse was to remain in this community and enact his vengeance upon all who owed him, albeit through a different and more ruthless means. Of course, this plan hinged on the capability of the security company to create a sanctuary that was unassailable. Otherwise, he would have to prepare a secondary plan to build an underground refuge in a remote area. As Zhang Yi surveyed the surrounding neighbors, he noticed them gleefully speculating on the purpose of his abundant supplies. He could already envision the day of reckoning when they would attempt to storm his home to seize his possessions. This was a reality he had endured before. Yet, he felt no fear, for in this life, he would be ready in advance, ensuring that those who sought to take from him would see but not savor, ultimately leaving them seething with frustration. Zhang Yi and Fang Yuqing resided in an apartment building. Given Zhang Yi's managerial position at a Walmart warehouse, neighbors frequently enlisted his help in acquiring discounted items. Thus, they were all well acquainted with him. Upon observing the three of them return with such a bounty, an elderly woman, out with her grandson, approached them. Her eyes glinted with desire as she beheld the array of food, including fresh beef and lamb. "Little Zhang, how come you brought back so much? Did you find a deal at the warehouse? You surely cannot consume all this. Why not share some with the neighbors?" This was Aunt Lin, who worked on the homeowners committee. She often wielded her slight authority to boss others around, acting as though she were their leader. In the past, she had often solicited Zhang Yi's assistance in procuring cheap goods, displaying a penchant for taking advantage of others. In his previous life, she had even bartered for food from him through her incessant nagging. Yet when the other neighbors had raided Zhang Yi's home, she had not only refrained from intervening, but had exhibited more vigor than the younger ones. Fang Yuqing and Lin Caning, not wishing to provoke the woman, quickly interjected. "These items were all purchased by Zhang Yi. We are merely assisting him in bringing them back." Aunt Lin's gaze immediately shifted to Zhang Yi, her smile widening. "Little Zhang, it seems these are goods from your warehouse. How about sharing a bit with Aunt Lin?" As she spoke, her grandson, Little Tiger, had already climbed onto one of the carts and was reaching for a box of chocolates. Despite his small stature, his gaze was sharp, and he eagerly grabbed a box of imported chocolates worth over 200 at the supermarket. Without a word, Zhang Yi swiftly snatched back his belongings. He then coldly addressed Aunt Lin, stating, "I apologize, but I intend to keep these for myself." With the impending apocalypse approaching, he could hardly muster the courtesy to engage in pleasantries. Aunt Lin's expression changed abruptly, feeling insulted by Zhang Yi's blatant disregard for her authority as a community leader, which incensed her greatly. Particularly distressing was her grandson, Xiao Hu, who, after being pushed aside by Zhang Yi, began to wail for chocolate. Pointing an accusatory finger at Zhang Yi, he shouted with contempt, "You wicked man, return my chocolate. Otherwise, I'll make you pay." Zhang Yi fixed him with a frosty gaze and warned, "Utter another word, and I shall strike you." Startled by the threat, Xiao Hu burst into tears, collapsing onto the ground in a fit of rage. Aunt Lin hastily rushed to console her grandson, then turned her ire toward Zhang Yi. "How old are you? Why stoop to the level of child? It's merely a box of chocolate. What is wrong with giving it to him? If not, why not just give him one? Consider my purchase, and I'll reimburse you later. Do you think I'm trying to cheat you?" Zhang Yi merely scoffed, aware that in this era of mobile payments, transactions were effortlessly facilitated. Her promise of reimbursement was clearly a ruse to avoid paying. "I've already stated, this is for my own consumption. If he desires chocolate, let him go to the supermarket." Zhang Yi retorted with a smirk before beckoning Fang Yuqing and Lin Caning to depart. As they left, Aunt Lin's furious shouts echoed behind them, but Zhang Yi remained indifferent. With her son and daughter-in-law working away from home, she was left to care for her grandson alone. Typically, the old woman only purchased provisions for a day, and thus, As the end of days loomed, her household supplies dwindled first. In a moment of compassion, Zhang Yi had previously aided them, yet in this life devoid of his assistance. It would be a miracle for the unscrupulous old woman and her mischievous grandson, Xiaohu, to survive even 10 days. Zhang Yi had no intention of squabbling with the deceased. His apparent heartlessness stemmed from the fact that once the day arrived, merely surviving became a monumental challenge for everyone. The fates of others were secondary to his own. Once they had transported 3 carts of supplies back to his home, Zhang Yi bid them farewell. "Zhang Yi, don't forget to treat us." Fan Yuqing playfully winked at him. However, upon witnessing her gesture, Zhang Yi felt a wave of nausea wash over him and offered only a perfunctory response. Initially, the 2 women had intended to linger, seeking clues about Zhang Yi's hidden wealth, but seeing his disinterest in entertaining them, they reluctantly took their leave. After their departure, Zhang Yi opened his personal space, storing away the items, eager to observe whether the supplies would undergo any transformation while within. Having completed these tasks, night had already fallen. Instead of resting, Zhang Yi retrieved paper and pen, meticulously planning the preparations for the upcoming month. Though he often exhibited a laid-back demeanor, the instinct to survive could ignite a profound potential within him. To ensure a comfortable existence in a post-apocalyptic world, the foremost task is to secure a reliable food supply, a challenge that is not insurmountable. Apart from my routine purchases, I can also retrieve provisions from the warehouse. However, patience is paramount. Thorough reconnaissance must precede any action, and it is prudent to gather supplies only a few days before the calamity strikes, thereby avoiding unwanted scrutiny. Being apprehended would surely lead to a dire fate. I would not survive long in confinement. Zhang Yi inscribed the word food in his notebook and marked it with a check. Next on his list was heating. Following the apocalypse, energy supplies would dwindle significantly, rendering air conditioning useless. Thus, the simplest methods must be employed. A fireplace emerges as the optimal choice. The principles behind a fireplace and a kong, a traditional heated bed, are similar, relying on primitive methods for warmth. European winters, characterized by frigid temperatures, often necessitate such means to endure the long, cold season. Therefore, it will be essential to undertake renovations to the dwelling, ideally incorporating insulation to retain heat. Reflecting on renovations, Zhang Yi recalled an unsettling memory from his previous life, when intruders had breached his home, causing a tightening in his chest. It is imperative to fortify my residence into an impregnable steel fortress. This entails the installation of thick steel plates or alloy materials, sufficient to withstand typical explosive assaults. During an apocalypse, desperate individuals may resort to any means for survival. Thus, thorough preparation is essential. One must not gamble with life and safety, having tasted death once. Zhang Yi is resolute in avoiding a second encounter. The matter of a safe house is also manageable. Tianhai City boasts security companies dedicated to safeguarding the elite, including services for constructing secure residences. Zhang Yi recalled news of a wealthy individual abroad who had erected a super fortress capable of withstanding assaults from small-scale weaponry. The next concern is pharmaceuticals. I must guard against falling ill without access to treatment. Walmart's warehouse holds a plethora of common medications for ailments, such as colds and fevers. Yet this is far from adequate. The Cambrian storm is expected to last for decades. I must be fully prepared. Fortunately, Zhang Yi has cultivated a commendable network in Tianhai City, particularly due to his experience in warehouse management, which has afforded him connections with hospital supply personnel. With sufficient financial resources, he can procure virtually any medication. Once these issues are resolved, Zhang Yi tapped his pen on the notebook. There remains one final concern to address, and his gaze sharpened with determination. That concern is weaponry. In a world where humanity has eroded, conflicts over resources will be rampant. Life will be as disposable as grass. To survive, one must possess formidable force. Zhang Yi is not a master of combat, yet even the most skilled fighters fear a kitchen knife. The key is to ensure that the weapons at my disposal are sufficiently powerful to mitigate such concerns. Obtaining a machete, crowbar, and hatchet is feasible. Bows, air guns, and compound bows are also accessible through various channels. However, the most formidable weapon remains the American katana, which can only be acquired through the black market in the country. Should I venture abroad to procure one? It is rather impractical. The outside world is unfamiliar, and a single outing would require several days. Lacking an overseas firearm permit, acquiring a weapon from a shop is out of the question. Zhang Yi stroked his chin, realizing that this issue could not be resolved for the time being. However, with a month at his disposal, he believed that with sufficient financial resources, a solution could be found. After dedicating 3 hours to crafting a flawless plan, he indulged in a soothing hot bath and subsequently succumbed to slumber in the comfort of his own bed. The following morning, Zhang Yi roused himself from his slumber. He had not enjoyed a restful night, having been awakened several times by nightmares. Upon awakening, he found himself still ensconced in the warmth and comfort of his bed, allowing a deep sigh of relief to escape his lips. The harrowing times during the apocalypse had inflicted profound psychological scars upon him. To avert a recurrence of such trauma, Zhang Yi resolved to ensure that he was thoroughly prepared for any eventuality. After rising, Zhang Yi prepared himself a hearty breakfast. He then accessed his otherworldly space to inspect the status of the supplies he had stored within. To his delight, the meat, fruits, and vegetables he had placed inside overnight remained entirely unchanged. While the meat showed no immediate signs of deterioration, fruits and vegetables typically lose their freshness after a night. Yet, those he had stored in the otherworldly space appeared as pristine as when he had purchased them the day before. His otherworldly space seemed to exist independently of this realm. Perhaps the rules governing the passage of time there differed, possibly flowing at a slower rate or even remaining static. This revelation was indeed extraordinary. It meant he could store a myriad of items without concern. However, upon inspecting several fish he had placed inside, he discovered they were all deceased. Strangely, despite their lifeless state, they exhibited no signs of spoilage. Zhang Yi pondered this, gaining further insight into the operational rules of his otherworldly space. It appeared that living creatures could not be stored, or if they were, they could not survive for an extended period. It seemed that his aspiration to reside within this space was rather impractical. Nevertheless, this was not a significant issue. The vast expanse of the otherworldly space could not compare to the comfort of his own home. As long as he could store items, he was content. With this in mind, a plethora of ideas flooded Zhang Yi's thoughts. If he could preserve fresh meat, vegetables, and fruits, what about prepared meals? Although he possessed culinary skills, he acknowledged that he could not rival a professional chef. Relying solely on his cooking would eventually become monotonous. Thus, Zhang Yi promptly dialed the largest 5-star hotel in Tianhai City, Hongfu Tianxia. This establishment offered takeout, and he was fond of their exquisite cuisine. "Hello, this is Hongfu Tianxia Hotel. How may I assist you?" Without hesitation, Zhang Yi replied, "I am hosting guests at my residence and require a grand banquet spanning 3 days and nights, necessitating a reservation for 500 tables of food." The voice on the other end was taken aback. Preparing 500 tables of food would take an extensive amount of time, and given their 5-star status, the cost for the simplest banquet would be no less than 3,000 to 4,000 per table. Upon a calculation of 500 tables, that amounts to over $1 million. The waiter, hesitant to take initiative, promptly replied, "Please hold on for a moment. I shall consult our manager." After a brief interval, another individual answered the call. "Good day, sir. I am Chen Dingfang, the manager of the Hongfu Grand Hotel. May I inquire how you wish to be addressed?" Chapter 5. Securing funds through loans. Zhang Yi replied, "My name is Zhang Yi. I would like to reserve 500 tables for a banquet. Is there any issue on your end?" The manager was taken aback. Such a request was unprecedented since the hotel's inception. However, given the magnitude of the order, they had no choice but to accept it. "Mr. Zhang, 500 tables would amount to over $1 million. If you require our services, we will prepare immediately, but we will need a deposit of 200,000 in advance." Zhang Yi responded, "That is not a problem. Please send me your account information, and I will transfer the funds." With the assurance of financial backing, the manager eagerly complied, adding Zhang Yi as a friend and sending him the bank details. Without hesitation, Zhang Yi transferred the 200,000. Once the manager confirmed the deposit with the finance department, he swiftly began issuing directives across various departments. Quickly, we have a substantial order. Procurement, expedite the inventory. And the kitchen should refrain from accepting any other takeout orders for now. We must prepare the 500 tables within a day. Meanwhile, after hanging up, Zhang-Yi couldn't help but reflect. Although the money will be of no use in a month, it is still essential for making purchases at present. In his possession were his parents' inheritance and his savings, totaling around 2 million. With half of it gone, he felt a pang of regret. However, he quickly reassured himself that it was, in fact, a blessing. Many individuals clutching vast sums of money ultimately found it worthless. Not everyone has the opportunity to spend their wealth. Nevertheless, numerous expenses lay ahead, and he needed to devise a plan to procure more funds. Zhang Yi's gaze fell upon his family's property. This residence, located in the central area of Tianhai City, spanned 120 square meters and was built a decade ago. According to current market trends, the price per square meter exceeded 40,000. Thus, the property was valued at no less than 5 million. I shall mortgage it for a loan that will grant me the funds I require. Zhang Yi chuckled to himself, finding comfort in the notion of borrowing money that he would not need to repay. He promptly departed from his home and drove to the bank to secure the loan. On the way, he received a message from Fang Yuqing. Zhang Yi, I'm so bored this weekend. I wish I had someone to accompany me for a stroll. Zhang Yi glanced at the message and tossed his phone aside. Upon arriving at the bank, he initiated the loan process. Given the substantial amount he sought, his complete documentation, and the fact that the house was fully paid for, the loan was approved swiftly. However, the bank granted him only 4 million. Zhang Yi did not haggle over the amount. After all, it was free money, and he had no time to negotiate with the bank. After signing the necessary documents, the funds were promptly transferred to his account. Now, after expending over 1 million for the banquet, he still had approximately 5 million at his disposal. This would be sufficient for renovating the house, but he would also need to procure a significant quantity of medications and weapons. This amount might not suffice. Zhang Yi stroked his chin, pondering how to acquire more funds. At that moment, a young man with yellow hair, noticing Zhang Yi lost in thought, approached him with a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. Hey buddy, do you need some cash? Zhang Yi looked up at the young man. Who are you? The young man's smile widened as he lowered his voice, inquiring, are you in need of money right now, but the bank refuses to lend? Upon hearing this, Zhang Yi immediately understood the young man's intentions. He was undoubtedly a loan shark. A thought struck Zhang Yi, and he sighed, feigning a troubled expression. Yes, my family's business urgently requires funds. However, the bank. He paused, deliberately showcasing his predicament. The young man, seemingly understanding, replied, indeed. Borrowing from banks has become quite stringent these days. With all the regulations, the disbursement of funds is painfully slow. However, if you're in urgent need, I can assist you. Zhang Yi eyed him cautiously. You? Can you really manage that? I need several million. The young man's eyes sparkled with palpable excitement at the prospect of a substantial deal. He pulled out a business card from his pocket and handed it to Zhang Yi. Our company specializes in rescuing individuals in dire financial straits. If you need money, look no further. Zhang Yi glanced at the card, which read Duo Loan Financial Services Company Limited, and identified the young man as the business manager, Hu Minghua. Zhang Yi exclaimed, Can you truly lend me money? I require 5 million. If you can help me through this crisis, I assure you I will repay it within 3 months at most. Hu Minghua responded with a smile. This is quite negotiable. Our company possesses substantial resources, specifically aimed at assisting those in need of financial support. Come, let us discuss this matter at our office. Zhang Yi nodded eagerly. Following Hu Minghua to their establishment, the so-called company was situated in a remote office building. Upon entering, Hu Minghua led Zhang Yi to the office of their boss. The proprietor of the lending company, a burly man clad in a high-end Benny Road suit, projected an image of a legitimate business. Albeit his demeanor hinted at a certain ruthlessness, a trait cultivated through years of navigating the tough world of finance. Hu Minghua introduced Zhang Yi to the boss, stating, Manager, this is a client seeking a loan. The boss, named Chen Xiong, greeted Zhang Yi with a smile and invited him to sit. Mr. Zhang, how much would you like to borrow? The conversation was refreshingly straightforward, as expected from a company engaged in high-interest lending. Such an establishment, lacking in formality, was devoid of excessive bureaucracy. Moreover, they possess various means to ensure repayment, showing little concern for any potential defaults. Zhang Yi remarked, I wish to borrow 5 million. Chun Xiong furrowed his brow. Ah, that is indeed a considerable sum. However, Mr. Zhang, I must inform you beforehand that our interest rates are rather steep. You should be mentally prepared for that. Hu Minghua chimed in from the side. Mr. Zhang's business urgently requires capital for turnover. Once the operations stabilize, repaying this amount will not pose a challenge, will it? The two engaged in a harmonious exchange, which Zhang Yi observed keenly. Maintaining an appearance of urgency, Zhang Yi replied, Indeed, I will be able to repay swiftly. If the interest is high, so be it, as long as you can lend me the money. Chapter 6. Constructing the ultimate safe house. A smile spread across Chun Xiong's face. Very well, our interest rate stands at 4%. If you borrow 5 million, you shall repay 7 million. Therefore, you must first provide me with a promissory note for 7 million. Furthermore, you are required to offer adequate collateral of substantial value. Properties, factories, or vehicles will suffice. Zhang Yi feigned hesitation for a moment, then, with determination, produced the property deed from his possession. This was the document he had utilized for a bank loan, fortuitously on hand. This property is valued at over 5 million. Will that suffice as collateral for your headquarters? I also possess a Mercedes worth 300,000, which you may claim should I fail to repay. It was the first time Chun Xiong encountered such an agreeable client, and he swiftly examined the property deed. Upon confirming the details of Zhang Yi's estate, his satisfaction grew. Present market conditions indicated that the property could fetch at least 550,000. Coupled with the vehicle, this transaction promised no loss for him. However, Chun Xiong maintained an expression of dissatisfaction. Mr. Zhang, this property is worth at most 4 to 5 million. Yet, to extract 500,000 from me, I find myself at a disadvantage. Zhang Yi, taken aback, implored, Boss Chun, you must assist me. I am in urgent need of funds. If you could transfer the money today, I would only require 400,000. Chun Xiong exchanged a glance with Hu Minghua, both eyes sparkling with mischief. Their business thrived on exploiting desperate circumstances. The more urgent the need for cash, the greater the opportunity for them to profit. This is simply not a feasible deal, Chun Xiong declared. After a vigorous negotiation, both parties settled on 400,000. However, Zhang Yi insisted that the funds must be transferred to his account today. Though the lending company operated with unscrupulous intentions, their efficiency was undeniable, a distinct advantage over banks. Once the contract was signed, Zhang Yi's account swiftly reflected the 400,000 in cash. He chuckled inwardly, realizing that for Chun Xiong, this money was akin to a meat bun thrown to a dog, gone without a trace. Feeling rather pleased, Zhang Yi left with his newfound wealth. As he departed, the office echoed with the hearty laughter of Chun Xiong and Hu Minghua. Ha ha ha! This transaction was remarkably simple. That foolish lad actually walked away with 400,000. Chun Xiong exclaimed with pride, this deal will net us at least 2 to 3 million. Our performance for the month is secured. Leaning casually against the table, Hu Minghua remarked, Boss, given how readily he signed the contract, could there be an issue with that property? Chun Xiong, holding the property deed, replied with a grin, the deed is legitimate. Without a doubt, as long as the property belongs to him, he cannot escape. With the deed and that 700,000 promissory note in our possession, we will undoubtedly devise a means to acquire that property. Moreover, they possess an array of methods to thoroughly extract every ounce from Zhang Yi. Chun Xiong squinted, elegantly sipping his coffee. If all else fails, they could reach out to several overseas institutions to ascertain if there are any valuable parts on him to sell. We never engage in unprofitable transactions. Zhang Yi departed from the lending company with a cheerful demeanor. Casting a glance back at the office building, a faint smirk of derision graced his lips. They are such benevolent souls, generously providing me with funds to squander. Henceforth, there shall be no further intersections between Zhang Yi, Chun Xiong, and Hu Minghua. In fact, it is highly probable that they will succumb to the impending chill of the apocalypse in a month's time. Currently, Zhang Yi possesses approximately 9 million in funds, ample to execute his plans. After all, in the forthcoming purchases, he can conveniently employ a prepayment method. This 9 million translates to a purchasing power of several tens of millions. There is no need to amass further wealth. Otherwise, Zhang Yi would not hesitate to exploit the various online lending platforms. Driving his car, Zhang Yi arrived at the renowned Zhanglong Security Company in Tianhai City. Zhanglong is one of the largest security firms in Huaguo, specializing in providing security services for affluent individuals and celebrities. Occasionally, even high-ranking officials may seek their assistance for public outings. Zhang Yi sought them out because, in his previous life, he had heard of Zhanglong constructing a top-tier safe house worth $1 billion for the son of a billionaire in Jiangnan province. It was said that this family, originating from real estate, continued to live extravagantly amidst the apocalypse, largely due to the invaluable contribution of Zhanglong in creating their safe haven. Upon arriving at Zhanglong, Zhang Yi articulated his intentions to the reception desk. He was promptly escorted to a lounge by a member of the business department. The female receptionist served him freshly brewed coffee. Shortly thereafter, a burly man with a buzz cut entered. Dressed in a tailored black suit, he exuded a somewhat intimidating presence, raising concerns that his attire might burst at the seams. However, one could not deny the sense of security such a figure instilled in clients. "Good day, sir. I am Wu Huiran, the manager of the business department. How may we assist you today?" Wu Huiran inquired, taking a seat beside Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi took a sip of his coffee and replied, "I require your expertise in constructing a safe house for me, one that can withstand the highest levels of apocalyptic scenarios." Upon hearing this, Wu Huiran's expression shifted to one of seriousness. Such a statement might elicit laughter from others, as few would believe in the notion of an impending apocalypse. However, for Zhanglong, this was no jest. The wealthiest and most powerful individuals in the world are often the most fearful of death. Long ago, some affluent magnates abroad spent hundreds of millions to create their doomsday shelters. In recent years, many wealthy individuals worldwide have begun to emulate this behavior. Some individuals may genuinely fear the prospect of encountering large-scale natural disasters. Others, burdened by numerous adversaries in their daily lives, seek to fortify their sense of security. In response to this market demand, the Doomsday Safe House of the Zhanglong Security Company has come into existence. Upon hearing that Zhang Yi intended to construct a doomsday-level safe house, Wu Huiran immediately adopted a courteous demeanor. Such significant contracts are seldom acquired by them each year. "Mr. Zhang, we at Zhanglong are a world-class security firm. We are certainly capable of meeting your requirements." Zhang Yi promptly responded. "If I were to request that you completely renovate a residence on the 24th floor, would you be able to accomplish that?" Wu Huiran's gaze became somewhat peculiar. Typically, such safe houses are standalone villas or underground shelters. It is rare for the affluent to opt for safe houses within apartments. Nevertheless, should a client express a desire, their company would naturally strive to accommodate it. With a confident smile, Wu Huiran asserted, "That is certainly not an issue. At Zhanglong, we pride ourselves on being a top-tier security company. With our expertise, we can undoubtedly fulfill your request." Upon hearing Wu Huiran's assurance, Zhang Yi formulated a plan. If that were the case, he would transform his own residence into a safe house. He resolved to remain and witness the demise of those who had wronged him. Wu Huiran produced a tablet and handed it to Zhang Yi. "Our services are entirely customized. You may select the offerings you require, with corresponding prices clearly displayed." In this information age, communication is indeed convenient. Taking the tablet, Zhang Yi began to meticulously sift through the services available. One cannot deny the professionalism of a specialized firm. Provided the payment is adequate, Zhanglong Security Company can almost fulfill any request, including constructing safe houses 100 meters underground or beneath the sea. However, these projects would take too long for Zhang Yi, as he had only 1 month at his disposal. Chapter 7. Acquiring equipment. Upon completing his review of the safety house specifications, Zhang Yi promptly selected his desired services. First and foremost was the comprehensive reinforcement of the entire dwelling, which entailed a complete material overhaul. The walls, ceilings, and floors would be replaced with 200 millimeters thick alloy, supplanting the original structures. This aerospace material, weighing merely a third of steel, boasts a tensile strength tenfold that of high-quality steel. Utilizing this material for the safety house would seamlessly integrate with the building in which Zhang Yi resided, eliminating any concerns regarding structural overload. The windows would be fitted with the finest bulletproof glass available worldwide. Next was the ventilation system, which would be equipped with air filtration capabilities, ensuring that no harmful gases could infiltrate from the outside. Lastly, a comprehensive surveillance system would be installed, providing all-encompassing monitoring of both the interior and exterior of the residence. The doors would be replaced with robust anti-theft doors made from materials equivalent to those used in bank vaults, rendering them impervious even to small explosives. In summary, Zhang Yi's singular demand was to transform his home into an impregnable fortress. Having completed his selections, Zhang Yi handed the computer to Wu Huairan. Upon reviewing the choices, Wu Huairan's eyes widened in astonishment. A mere 120 square meters transformed into a veritable fortress. With the addition of weaponry, it would indeed resemble a stronghold, he murmured. Hearing this, Zhang Yi's gaze sharpened. Oh, do you have knowledge regarding fortifications? He inquired. Wu Huairan chuckled. I once served as a mercenary abroad and possess an extensive understanding of military weaponry. An idea sparked in Zhang Yi's mind, and he lowered his voice, asking, Is there a way for you to procure firearms? This question rendered Wu Huairan's expression grave. In Huagua, private ownership of firearms is strictly prohibited. Mr. Zhang, you must understand that, in principle, such items are not permitted for private possession, he replied quietly. Have you encountered some formidable adversaries to warrant such trepidation? Zhang Yi prompted. Indeed, I have offended certain individuals from the underworld. They are quite ruthless and armed. I was contemplating whether I could obtain some firearms for self-defense. Otherwise, I would merely be confined to my home, enduring their assaults, which is untenable. Wu Huairan chuckled softly. Mr. Zhang, I fear I cannot assist you with such matters. We are a legitimate company. Yet, from Wu Huairan's expression, Zhang Yi discerned that it was not an issue of capability, but rather a reluctance to engage in dubious dealings. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and addressed Wu Huairan. This safety house project will cost over 8 million. If I encounter further problems, it could reflect poorly on your company. He fixed his gaze on Wu Huairan, enunciating each word deliberately. I simply seek a means of protection. If you could assist me in this endeavor, I assure you shall not be at a loss. Wu Huairan remained silent, his brow furrowed as he weighed the implications of the situation. He undoubtedly has his own channels. However, he is unfamiliar with Zhang Yi's background, and thus refrains from introducing him lightly. You may return for now. Although I cannot assist with this matter directly, I can make inquiries on your behalf. If I receive any information, I will contact you. Wu Huairan clearly found himself at a crossroads. Nevertheless, Zhang Yi did not press too hard. Firearms indeed require a measure of caution. He chuckled. Very well, I shall await your news. By the way, this matter is quite urgent. I kindly ask for your swift assistance in creating a safe house. Wu Huairan replied, We can complete it within a maximum of half a month. After concluding his discussion with Wu Huairan, Zhang Yi promptly signed a contract, paying a deposit of 1 million yuan. As for the remaining balance, well, it is unlikely he would have the opportunity to settle it in this lifetime. Having departed from a Zhanglong security company, he had effectively resolved his accommodation issues. Next, Zhang Yi returned to his vehicle and called a familiar acquaintance, Liu Yang. Liu Yang operated a hunting ground in Tianhai City, having secured several hundred acres in Xishan, where various harmless small animals were kept for recreational hunting. He possessed numerous bows, crossbows, and air guns obtained through legitimate means. Zhang Yi had visited the place on several occasions. Thus, he had Liu Yang's contact information. He called to request Liu Yang to procure a batch of equipment, offering to pay a premium for the purchase. Liu Yang, being a businessman and aware that he would occasionally need favors from Zhang Yi, readily agreed to the request. Brother Zhang, why do you need so many weapons? These can only be used for hunting or personal enjoyment. They cannot be used to harm others. Liu Yang inquired with a smile, though his words carried a hint of caution. After all, the items were sold from his own inventory. Should Zhang Yi use these weapons to injure someone, Liu Yang could find himself in hot water. Of course, anyone able to run a hunting ground in Tianhai City must have some connections. Yet there was no need for him to assume risks on behalf of an ordinary friend like Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi laughed heartily and casually fabricated a reason. You're overthinking it. I've invited a few friends for a hunting trip at an African wildlife reserve soon, so I need to gather more equipment. Liu Yang clicked his tongue in amusement. Oh, Brother Zhang certainly knows how to have fun, but be cautious. Africa has plenty of lions and hyenas. Yes. So, when will the equipment be ready for me? I have some ready-made stock here. Just come by whenever you have time to pick it up. Zhang Yi wasted no time and promptly drove to Shishan hunting ground to collect his purchases. Time was of the essence, and he could not afford to delay even for a moment. From Liu Yang, he acquired 5 fine steel crossbows, 3 high-end compound bows, along with 300 arrows and bolts for each. Additionally, he purchased 2 exquisite hunting knives crafted from Damascus steel, known for their remarkable durability and sharpness, extremely difficult to damage unless subjected to prolonged cutting of hard materials. Such items would serve him well for self-defense. All these items filled the trunk to capacity. Gazing upon the vast array of equipment, Zhang Yi was instantly enveloped by a profound sense of security. He promptly transported a truckload of gear back to his residence. Having procured everything through legitimate channels and possessing a hunting license obtained out of personal interest, he felt no trepidation about potential inquiries from law enforcement. By the time he returned home, dusk had settled in. Zhang Yi ventured out once more, indulging in a delightful hot pot meal at Hadaleo. Contemplating the prospect of preparing his own hot pot in the future, he decided to order an astonishing 10,000 servings of hot pot base from the restaurant. The staff at Hadaleo were taken aback, initially suspecting him to be an adversarial merchant attempting to cause disruption. Fortunately, the restaurant's exemplary service prevented any immediate confrontation. Eventually, the manager approached Zhang Yi, inquiring about his unusual order, and subsequently accepted the transaction. However, the condition was cash payment to mitigate any concerns regarding potential sabotage from a rival business. Zhang Yi readily complied, making an on-the-spot payment exceeding 1 million yuan. His lavish generosity left the manager beaming with delight, even offering an additional 500 servings as a courtesy. Chapter 8. The supplies gradually arrived. Zhang Yi left the address, instructing the staff of Hadaleo to deliver the hot pot base to him. As for the food ingredients, they could be directly sourced from the Walmart warehouse. The hot pot base, however, was not something that could be casually sold. Even the packaged hot pot ingredients available in the market paled in comparison to those found in the restaurant. Otherwise, customers would not flock to the establishment for a hot pot experience. After finishing his meal, Zhang Yi prepared to head home when he received a call from the manager of a 5-star hotel. Mr. Zhang, the 500 banquet tables you ordered are ready. May I ask if you are available to receive them now? Yes, please have them delivered, Zhang Yi replied. Upon returning home, he awaited the arrival of exquisite food and drink. The 500 banquet tables would suffice for him for 2 to 3 years. With 8 or 9 million still at his disposal, he felt no remorse in spending lavishly. In fact, he was eager to expend his wealth. While on his way home, Zhang Yi pondered what other delicacies he might enjoy. Consequently, he placed orders with several renowned restaurants in Tianhai City, requesting 100 tables from each. He had now ordered several thousand tables across the 8 major cuisines, including Western cuisine. This effectively secured his culinary needs for half a lifetime. Shortly thereafter, the banquet delivery vehicles from Hongfu Tianxia Hotel arrived at the entrance of the Yuelu community. A grand procession of 20 to 30 vehicles caused a significant traffic jam, leaving the neighbors in astonishment. Uncle Yu, the security guard, hurriedly approached to inquire about their purpose. The hotel manager explained the situation, yet Uncle Yu insisted that the residents must be present to grant entry. Given the scale of the operation, he could not permit entry without ensuring the community's safety. Reluctantly, the hotel manager called Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi descended and arrived at the community entrance, where he found a crowd gathered, including neighbors from his building, as well as Fang Yuqing and Lin Kaining, who had come to witness the spectacle. Zhang Yi approached Uncle Yu with a smile. "Uncle Yu, these are my delivery vehicles. Please let them in." Uncle Yu's expression was one of utter surprise. "Delivery? What on earth are you eating that requires so many vehicles?" The surrounding neighbors were equally astounded upon hearing it was a banquet delivery. "Goodness, there must be several hundred tables. Where will you even put them? Is there a special occasion, perhaps a wedding? But hundreds of tables seem a bit excessive. Look closely. That is Hongfu Tianxia, a five-star hotel. Ordering hundreds of tables, there must cost at least 100,000. My goodness, a single banquet could cost over 100,000. Zhang Yi truly keeps a low profile. Previously, it was known that he came from a respectable background, but now it seemed he was a true magnate. The neighbors buzzed with speculation, their gazes toward Zhang Yi now filled with admiration and a hint of reverence. On the roadside, Fang Yuqing observed the scene with a firm set to her lips, resolute in her determination to win over Zhang Yi. She approached him with a smile, inquiring, "Zhang, what has been keeping your family busy lately? You've purchased quite a lot." Zhang Yi, however, chose to ignore her, instead offering a cigarette to Uncle Yu. Upon seeing the owner arrive, Uncle Yu opened the gate, allowing the convoy from Hongfu Tianxia Hotel to enter the community, with Zhang Yi leading the way. Although he did not engage with Fang Yuqing, she appeared unfazed, chatting amiably beside him. "Is there anything at home that you can't share with me? Aren't we good friends? I hope to learn more about you in the future. Please don't treat me like an outsider." Zhang Yi cast a piercing glance at her, coldly retorting, "All these things are for my boss. Even our last dinner at the Western restaurant was on his tab." He sighed, "If only I were truly that wealthy." Fang Yuqing's expression shifted dramatically. You're not joking, are you?" Zhang Yi shrugged. "Why would I deceive you? We've known each other for years, and you're well aware of my circumstances. My parents have passed away, and I'm merely a supervisor at a warehouse. There is no wealth to speak of." His explanation left Fang Yuqing's countenance fluctuating between emotions. She had indeed harbored doubts, as he seemed like a rich second generation, likely from a family engaged in significant business. Zhang Yi's admission of not being a rich heir clarified all her uncertainties. She discreetly distanced herself from him, smoothing her hair, and with a polite smile remarked, "Regardless of whether you are wealthy or not, we are still the best of friends, aren't we? I am not a materialistic woman." The emphasis she placed on the word friends was deliberate. A green tea girl never goes to extremes, as she still requires backup and sycophants to cater to her needs. Zhang Yi merely curled his lip in response, choosing not to engage further. Meanwhile, the employees of Hongfu Tianxia began transporting tables laden with sumptuous dishes to the designated location indicated by Zhang Yi. He, well liked among his peers, had borrowed a warehouse in the underground parking of the community, directing them to deposit the food there for the time being. Although 500 tables of food constituted a vast quantity, once packaged in dining boxes, the space they occupied was not overly ostentatious. Zhang Yi had ordered only the finest delicacies, abalone, shark fin, Australian lobster, truffles, caviar, and more. The task of moving 500 tables of feast to the warehouse would take some time, even leaving the hotel manager astonished. In his years of managing, he had never encountered such a colossal takeaway order. Zhang Yi, however, reassured them to continue transporting the items to the warehouse. Once the workers departed, he discreetly stored all the food in his own spatial realm, causing others to harbor suspicions about his peculiar behavior. In this bustling world, individuals are often preoccupied, leaving little time to concern themselves with the affairs of an inconsequential stranger. Consequently, whether it be neighbors or hotel staff, their remarks are fleeting, lacking genuine investment in the matter at hand. Soon enough, Zhang Yi had effortlessly transferred the sumptuous feast meant for 500 into a separate dimension. Later that evening, Zhang Yi received a call from Wu Huiren, the manager of Zhanglong Company. Wu informed Zhang Yi that they were fully prepared and could promptly commence the construction of his safe house at his convenience. Zhang Yi replied that they could come over the following day, as he intended to temporarily reside in the hotel. After discussing the safe house, Zhang Yi awaited further communication from Wu Huiren. He had another critical matter to address with Wu, namely the acquisition of the equalizer of all beings. After a moment's hesitation, Wu lowered his voice and said to Zhang Yi, "If you truly require such a thing, I could provide you with a lead. However, the price may be somewhat steep. Zhang Yi nodded, fully aware of the implications. Nevertheless, financial concerns were no longer an issue for him. As long as the quality was assured, he was unfazed. Wu responded with ease. Very well. In that case, I will make the necessary introductions. I will inform you of the transaction location in 3 days. Chapter 9. The super warehouse with the matter of firearms settled. Zhang Yi felt a considerable sense of relief. In the apocalypse, possessing such a weapon instilled immense confidence, whether confronting humans or non-human entities. The following day, Zhang Yi meticulously organized essential items into his personal space. As he transformed his residence into a secure haven, he temporarily relocated to a hotel. Early that morning, 3 black vans entered the Yulu neighborhood. A throng of workers from the Dragon Company, clad in uniforms, disembarked and commenced measuring the dimensions of Zhang Yi's home. Numerous neighbors observed this spectacle, their eyes brimming with curiosity. What had come over Zhang Yi lately? Had he taken leave of his senses, engaging in such peculiar activities? A few colleagues chuckled, remarking, just the other day at the supermarket, I saw him purchasing 3 carts full of groceries. Ha ha ha. One might think the apocalypse was nigh, hoarding so much food. Wouldn't he all go to waste after expiration? Perhaps he has lost his mind. The community viewed Zhang Yi's unusual behavior with bemusement, yet they remained indifferent, treating him as a mere source of amusement. Even Fang Yuqing and Lin Caning believed him to be mentally unhinged. Lin Caning, suddenly enlightened, exclaimed, no wonder he dined at that Michelin 3-star restaurant the other day. Clearly, something is amiss with him. Fang Yuqing frowned, her mood distinctly sour. Reflecting on that day when she had approached Zhang Yi and helped him lug home an abundance of items, her feet sore from the effort, she felt a swell of frustration. What on earth was Zhang Yi up to? Lin Caning expressed concern. He promised to treat us to a grand feast. Wouldn't he forget, would he? I've been yearning for a meal at that Michelin 3-star place. Fang Yuqing scoffed. Let's not hold our breath. Given his recent erratic demeanor, even if he invites me, I wouldn't go. Imagine the embarrassment if anyone saw us dining together. I have aspirations of securing a wealthy partner. I cannot afford to tarnish my reputation. Though Lin Caning felt a pang of disappointment at Fang Yuqing's words, she resigned herself to the situation and relinquished her hopes. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi remained indifferent to how the neighbors perceived him. In a month's time, they would come to realize who the true fool was. Zhang Yi stepped out of his home and drove to the Walmart warehouse. It was Monday, time to report for work and take the opportunity to scout the warehouse, preparing for future endeavors. The Walmart warehouse was situated in the Economic Development Zone, on the outskirts of Tianhai City. Due to the relatively low land prices, many prominent corporations had established their warehouses here, including pharmaceutical companies, making it convenient for Zhang Yi to acquire some potent medications later on. Upon arriving at the Walmart warehouse, Zhang Yi clocked in, as usual. As the warehouse supervisor, he was thoroughly familiar with the operations here. It can be said that he is intimately familiar with every warehouse, even to the minutiae of each shelf. In the past, visits to this place often felt tedious. However, today, upon witnessing the vast warehouses filled with goods worth tens or even hundreds of billions, he was engulfed by an exhilarating thrill. Soon, these items would be taken away by him, transforming into his most vital resources for survival in the impending apocalypse. As the primary warehouse of Walmart in southern China, the abundance of supplies here surpasses anyone's imagination. The stockpile of cola alone amounts to tens of thousands of cases. The entire warehouse spans over 1 million square feet, brimming with a diverse array of everyday necessities. Among these, one could find not only food, clothing, and hardware tools, but also automobiles, drones, diesel generators, and barrels of gasoline. It could almost be said that anything permissible for sale in a supermarket can be found here. Zhang Yi had worked here for many years, and he was well acquainted with the layout of every shelf. He was also quite familiar with the work schedule and the locations of the surveillance cameras. Despite the stringent security measures, he knew the vulnerabilities well enough to incapacitate the entire monitoring system within 10 minutes. He could then exploit the system's capabilities to seize all the items present. Nevertheless, Zhang Yi did not rush to take action. There was ample time, and he wished to avoid arousing any suspicion. After meandering through the warehouse, he departed, clutching a pack of yellow Crane Tower cigarettes, and made his way to the adjacent warehouse of ruining pharmaceutical company. Having worked in the same vicinity for some time, he had developed a rapport with the staff there. Upon arriving, Zhang Yi sought out Zhou Hairan, a manager from their warehouse. They were well acquainted, having built trust over time. In a large corporation's warehouse, it is inevitable that there are individuals who exploit the inventory for personal gain. Zhou Hairan, whose brother-in-law is the vice president of Ruining Group, often pilfered medication to sell. After conversing with Zhou Hairan, Zhang Yi subtly revealed his intent, expressing a desire to acquire a few boxes of effective medication for acute illnesses. Initially, Zhou Hairan was cautious. However, upon Zhang Yi's mention of offering double the market price for the drugs, he could no longer contain his eagerness. Ultimately, they struck a deal at the price of $3 million for 5 large boxes of medicine. For an average person, the cumulative number of illnesses throughout their lifetime would not even amount to half of what Zhang Yi had acquired. With the procurement of the medication, Zhang Yi had essentially gathered all the supplies necessary for the apocalypse. With less than a month remaining before doomsday, he certainly lacked the motivation to continue working. Thus, he approached the warehouse manager's office, fabricating a story about the death of a distant relative, requesting a 20-day leave of absence to attend the funeral. Zhang Yi was well-liked and maintained a good relationship with the manager, so despite the absurdity of the request, he faced no obstacles and easily secured his leave. In the ensuing period, Zhang Yi intended to recline comfortably in a 5-star hotel, awaiting the arrival of his procured supplies and the completion of the safe house as construction. As he exited the manager's office, he chanced upon Fang Yuqing, who was bent over the coffee machine, pouring herself a cup of coffee. It must be said that this woman possessed a certain allure reminiscent of green tea. There was an inherent flirtation about her. While pouring her coffee, she could not help but sway her petite figure, inadvertently drawing the attention of several young admirers eager to curry favor. Nearby, a man with a cheerful demeanor, named Zhou Peng, extended an invitation to Fang Yuqing to attend a concert by Jay Cho, brandishing his tickets with a sense of pride. Zhang Yi recalled Zhou Peng distinctly, as they resided in the same neighborhood. Moreover, he was a devoted admirer of Fang Yuqing, and among those who had wronged Zhang Yi in a past life, he held a share of the blame. Chapter 10. Confronting the obsequious Zhou Peng was nearby, lavishing attentions upon Fang Yuqing. However, it was evident that Fang Yuqing had little interest in a man like Zhou Peng. In terms of financial standing, Zhou Peng was significantly inferior to Zhang Yi, even renting his accommodation. Yet, Fang Yuqing maintained her cheerful demeanor as she said, "Thank you, Zhou Peng. Unfortunately, I have plans with friends that evening." Such bad luck. A flicker of disappointment crossed Zhou Peng's face. He had spent an entire month's salary on 2 concert tickets, hoping to seize the opportunity to confess his feelings to Fang Yuqing during the event. To his dismay, those hopes were dashed. Zhang Yi observed this scene with a smirk of amusement, fully aware that Zhou Peng, the sycophant, would ultimately achieve nothing. However, amidst his disappointment, Zhou Peng's gaze fell upon Zhang Yi's smiling face, igniting a surge of anger within him. To divert his embarrassment, he approached Zhang Yi and exclaimed, "Zhang, your actions are quite unscrupulous. As a man, you should not have a woman assist you with lifting things. Is that appropriate? Fang Yuqing has been complaining about her sore back today. I hope you refrain from troubling her in the future." Zhang Yi glanced at Fang Yuqing, realizing that she had spread the word about the incident. Fang Yuqing feigned innocence, saying it's nothing, really. His health isn't at stake. He simply cannot manage heavy labor. It seems his back is slightly strained. As she spoke, she pinched her waist and furrowed her brow, feigning pain. In an attempt to display his masculinity before Fang Yuqing, Zhou Peng boldly pointed at Zhang Yi, declaring, "You should give Fang Yuqing 500 yuan for medical expenses immediately." To his surprise, Zhang Yi shot him a cold glare and retorted, "She offered to help me of her own volition. I did not ask for her assistance. Besides, who do you think you are, dictating terms to me? Do you truly believe you hold any significance?" Zhang Yi's fierce rebuke left both Zhou Peng and Fang Yuqing bewildered. Zhou Peng, merely a lowly clerk in the warehouse, possessed neither power nor influence. His audacity to reprimand Zhang Yi stemmed from Zhang Yi's typically amiable nature and reluctance to engage in conflict. Yet, confronted with Zhang Yi's genuine ire, Zhou Peng faltered. Why are you shouting? I was merely trying to discuss this with you. With a cold smirk, Zhang Yi turned and walked away, disinterested in further discourse. To him, everyone around seemed akin to the deceased. He anticipated that within a month, 99 of those in his vicinity would succumb to the impending cataclysm. Why waste breath on the dead? Once Zhang Yi had departed, Zhou Peng approached Fang Yuqing and whispered, "Yuqing, I told you that Zhang Yi is not a decent person. You should keep your distance from him." Fang Yuqing furrowed her brow, perplexed, as she too had noticed that Zhang Yi seemed to have transformed entirely in recent days. After encountering her, he no longer took the initiative to greet her. Even during the nights, he refrained from messaging her to say goodnight. Something must be amiss. Fang Yuqing thought to herself. Zhang Yi finished work and drove to a five-star hotel in Tianhai City, precisely the one he had previously booked, Hongfu Tianxia. Upon learning of Zhang Yi's arrival, the manager of Hongfu Tianxia greeted him with a beaming smile and promptly arranged a room for him. The cost of a room in a five-star hotel exceeded 1,000 for a single night, yet Zhang Yi felt no remorse. After all, he still possessed millions, and he would only consider it wasteful if he failed to spend it. That evening, Fang Yuqing, the epitome of virtue, astonishingly took the initiative to message Zhang Yi. "Zhang Yi, I passed by your house today and noticed some renovations happening." Zhang Yi smirked, responding with a simple, "Yes." Fang Yuqing continued, "You seem rather peculiar lately. Hoarding items and renovating your house. Is something about to happen?" Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. Despite her seemingly innocent demeanor, she was far from foolish. It seemed that his recent odd behaviors had indeed caught her attention. However, he was indifferent. The opinions of others held no significance for him now. "It's nothing," he replied coldly, tossing his phone aside. On the other end, Fang Yuqing looked at the indifferent Zhang Yi, feeling a sense of discomfort within her. For the past 2 years, Zhang Yi had treated her exceptionally well, always checking in on her and finding various excuses to chat with her every night. Yet recently, he had transformed into a completely different person, exhibiting a cold demeanor and even neglecting to reach out to her. This shift left Fang Yuqing feeling quite uneasy. She might not be interested in Zhang Yi, but she absolutely could not tolerate the notion of him losing interest in her. To her, it symbolized the escape of a fish from her pond. Although Zhang Yi was not a wealthy heir, he was still a quality middle-class individual. If she failed to find a rich partner in the future, there might still be an opportunity for her with Zhang Yi. Fang Yuqing picked up her phone and sent another message, expressing, "I feel like our communication has diminished lately, leaving me with a hint of loneliness." However, after waiting for an extended period, she received no response. Biting her lip, she began to feel increasingly agitated. What on earth is wrong with Zhang Yi lately? How dare he ignore my messages when I'm the one reaching out? Nearby, her roommate Lin Kaining, having overheard Fang Yuqing's complaints, approached with a grin. "Zhang Yi has indeed been acting strangely. Who knows why he is buying so much food and drink, and even booking numerous banquets at the hotel. It seems as if he is preparing for an impending shortage." Fang Yuqing frowned slightly at this remark and said to Lin Kaining, "Ningning, do you think something might truly happen after a while?" Zhang Yi began stockpiling goods only upon receiving the news. Lin Kaining, upon hearing this, was momentarily taken aback, then doubled over with laughter, clutching her belly. "Yuqing, have you lost your mind? If anything were truly to happen, the authorities would undoubtedly issue a notification. We should remain at ease. If we hoard supplies, others will mock us as fools." Fang Yuqing, upon hearing this, chuckled self-deprecatingly. "You make a valid point." Zhang Yi had been residing in the suite of a five-star hotel for several days, without venturing anywhere. During this time, he engaged in 2 major activities. He extensively procured banquets from various hotels, while simultaneously practicing the use of compound bow and crossbow within his room. Fortunately, Zhang Yi had always harbored a passion for hunting, which provided him with a commendable foundation. Now, within a 15-meter range, his accuracy was remarkably high, especially with the aid of a professional-grade compound bow, Such modern equipment empowered an ordinary individual to shoot arrows rivaling those of ancient archers. Not only could he contend with humans, but he could also inflict significant damage upon wild boars, wolves, and large dogs. Chapter 11. The completion of the safe house 3 days later. Under the guidance of Wu Huairan, Zhang Yi successfully acquired 2 firearms and 100 rounds of ammunition. Although the price was somewhat steep, Zhang. Chapter 12. Emptied warehouse worth billions. Zhang instructed the courier to deliver 100 colossal water barrels to the warehouse. He then placed them into the spatial realm and transported them back to his home. Chapter 13. The advent of the Ice Age. Zhang Yi has completely emptied the entire warehouse of Walmart South China. Resources valued at over 10 billion have all been transported into his alternate realm. Chapter 14. In the depths of extreme cold, I gaze at the tumultuous world outside. The Ice Age has begun. In the southern city of Tianhai, a heavy snowfall blankets the landscape, igniting fervent discussions across the internet. Some express their grievances, while others revel in their good fortune. Chapter 15. The White Lotus requests supplies at this moment. Fang Yuqing was curled up in her rented room, tightly wrapping herself in 2 blankets. Although the air conditioning had been set to 40 degrees, Chapter 16. Aunt Lin's Revenge. Zhang Yi strikes back. Zhang Yi lounged on the sofa, stifling a yawn in utter boredom. While others endured the bitter cold and hunger, he reveled in unparalleled comfort, enjoying a home equipped with the most exquisite insulation system. And Chapter 17. The cowardly Aunt Lin. Zhang Yi dismissed Aunt Lin's words as mere nonsense. However, with nothing better to do, he deliberately sought to tease this elderly woman. Chapter 18. Who fears whom in the game of ruthlessness upon the call being connected? A torrent of ferocious curses erupted from the other end. Are you seeking death? Who gave you the audacity to speak of me in the group? Chapter 19. A chilling wake-up called Chen Zhenghao finally felt a pang of fear. He took out his mobile phone and attempted to call for help at 120. However, the line remained perpetually busy. He dialed for over 2 minutes, yet the busy signal persisted. Chapter 20. Embracing a life of leisure. Can you fathom the sensation of being doused with cold water at a temperature of over -70 degrees? Zhang Yi wielded a large hose, directing its icy stream towards the small karamis gathered outside. The temperature difference between indoors and outdoors was nearly 100 degrees. Chapter 21. White Lotus and green tea in the owner's group. Aunt Lin could still be heard chattering incessantly. Have you all seen the news? Our country is powerful. Chapter 22. The utility of being a backup. Zhang Yi feigned confusion and said, "What is the matter? I haven't done anything wrong." Lin Kaining replied, "Are you really that oblivious? Right now, the heavy snow has sealed." Chapter 23. Water and power outages 3 days after the apocalypse had begun. The true spectacle was about to unfold. Zhang Yi was acutely aware of what this day would bring, and thus he spent the entire night awake, eagerly anticipating the events to come. Chapter 24. The threat of Aunt Lin as Zhang Yi immersed himself in his game, savoring imported snacks. His life was filled with flavor and enjoyment. Meanwhile, over 99% of Tianhai City, or rather the entire world, found itself plunged into a state of water and power shortages. Chapter 25. Scolding the old woman. Zhang Yi let out a cold laugh. In his previous life, he had misjudged the severity of the snow disaster, contemplating the prospect of selling a large quantity to his neighbors. Chapter 26. Black eating black. Upon encountering Aunt Lin, no matter how they called out to her, she remained unresponsive. It was at this moment that the neighbors began to realize they had fallen into Aunt Lin's trap. In an instant, the chat group. Chapter 27. A fierce kick to Lin Xiaohu. Soon, Zhang Yi was met with the harrowing cries of Aunt Lin, akin to that of a slaughtered pig. After Chen Zhenghao burst into the room, he delivered a resounding slap to Aunt Lin's face. Chapter 28. A pack of instant noodles cost 2,000. Granny Lin was robbed by Chen Zhenghao, who plundered her household supplies, and both she and her grandson, Xiaohu, endured a severe beating. The old woman, clinging to life, still managed to survive. Chapter 29. On the 10th day, the words of the affluent heir, Su Hao, sent shockwaves through the entire chat group. What? A single packet of instant noodles costs 2,000 yuan? Am I hearing this correctly? Hey, please don't inflate the situation like this. Chapter 30. Quality Backup. Lin Kainin continued. There are still 5 packs of instant noodles and 3 bags of dried noodles. The kitchen does have half a bottle of Lao Gan Ma, but the steamed buns and lo mein have long been consumed. Fang Yuqing held her head in anguish. Chapter 31. Zhang Yi's family is exceedingly wealthy. Bai Lianhua is overcome with desire after listening to Lin Kainin's advice. Fang Yuqing found it quite reasonable. The most significant reason, however, was her overwhelming hunger. The mere thought of the pictures Zhang Yi had sent her, those delectable steaks. Chapter 32. The White Lotus Persuasion through a video call. Fang Yuqing and Lin Kaining were granted a glimpse into Zhang Yi's current lifestyle. The delightful warmth and the abundance of sumptuous food depicted a life of considerable affluence. Chapter 33. A sudden slap in the face. Fang Yuqing's expression shifted slightly. After all, she was somewhat aware of her past actions. However, how could the little fairy? Chapter 34. The ugly often caused trouble. Zhang Yi vehemently criticized Fang Yuqing, exposing her essence as a manipulative and superficial individual. His words struck a deep chord within her. Despite her materialistic tendencies, promiscuity, and emotional games with men, she felt. Chapter 35. The plastic sisters. Zhang Yi let out a sigh, wondering if this woman truly believed him to be a mere collector of scrap. Although Fang Yuqing embodied the traits of a cunning green tea princess, she at least possessed the understanding of how to navigate social intricacies. Chapter 36. The ruthless woman. Due to the freezing of the water pipes, access to water in the community has become a significant issue. To obtain drinking water, one must brave the frigid temperatures outside, which plummet to over -70 degrees, to fetch snowmelt from the first floor. However, retrieving the snowmelt. Chapter 37. A deadly confrontation driven by their animosity towards Zhang Yi and an insatiable desire for his family's possessions. The two inseparable friends momentarily united in a common cause. However, regarding the manner in which they would proceed. Chapter 38. Drenched in liquid gold. Upon realizing that no one was responding to him, Zhou Peng knocked even more vigorously on the door. Zhang Yi, Zhang Yi. It is I, Zhou Peng. Chapter 39. The stench bomb. Fang Yuqing felt a pang of distress for her sofa, while simultaneously being repulsed by the urine-soaked state of Zhou Peng. After all, he had borne the brunt of the splashing at the entrance. In a fit of exasperation, she shouted at Zhou Peng, urging him not to sit on the sofa. Chapter 40. The gunshot. Zhang Yi ignited the stink bomb and swiftly hurled it through the shooting hole above the door. Upon hitting the ground, the stink bomb promptly emitted a thick plume of black smoke. The acrid odor rapidly permeated the corridor. Chapter 41. The neighbors who only shout slogans. Upon the establishment of the new community group, the homeowners and tenants began to converse in a state of panic. Chen Jinghao appeared to be a devil incarnate. He had forcefully entered 3 households, breaking down their doors. On the 3rd floor, in Unit 301. Chapter 42. Reserve Grain. Lu Tiantian's remarks were met with ridicule from a group of male property owners. In this apocalyptic era, who still indulges you delicate beings? Huh? Do you truly believe yourselves to be of any significance? Chapter 43. She grew anxious after Chen Jinghao had taken the life of the resident in Unit 301. The atmosphere within the entire building became exceedingly tense. The once boisterous crowd had fallen silent, with no one daring to utter a word. It appeared that Chen Jinghao was also aware of this shift in demeanor. Chapter 44. Why should I show compassion? What ultimately befalls Lu Tiantian, though unseen by all, can be surmised. A young girl, ensnared by a pack of wolves, what fate could she possibly encounter? Even if Chen. Chapter 45. The decision to launch a strong offensive within the confines of Building 25, Chen Jinghao and his companions successively plundered several households, resulting in the direct and indirect demise of 5 individuals. Such circumstances led to a sense of urgency. Chapter 46. High voltage. They had arrived at Zhang Yi's doorstep, holding umbrellas. However, the numerous pinhole cameras installed by the Zhanglong Security Company on this floor were particularly conspicuous. Chapter 47. The arrow of tetanus. Indeed, some individuals gradually began to perceive the peculiarities surrounding Zhang Yi. In this frigid apocalypse, everyone was suffering from hunger and cold. Even those who typically had provisions at home found their existence exceedingly arduous. Yet only Chapter 48. Waiting for Death Without Medication. Fong Yuqing, Wang Min, Sun Jichao, and others fled back like lost souls. Upon returning to the house and shutting the door, they were drenched in cold sweat, gasping for breath, especially the injured among them. Chapter 49. Boldly seeking medicine from Zhang Yi. Upon hearing that Zhang Yi possessed medicine, Wang Min and Sun Jichao were immediately filled with excitement. When faced with the specter of death, one will clutch at any glimmer of hope. Sun Jichao struggled to utter, "Is this truly the case?" Chapter 50. Teasing the White Lotus. Zhang Yi subtly retorted, "What do you think?" Beside Fong Yuqing, Wang Min and others nudged her, urging her to promptly address the matter at hand. Chapter 51. No medicine. Awaiting infection. Wang Min and his companions are seething with anger. "It was you, Fong Yuqing, who initially lured us to attack the Zhang Yi family. Now, as we suffer casualties and injuries, you wish to abandon us and seek comfort for yourself? Not a chance." Zhou Peng, who is currently performing surgery, is infuriated upon hearing that Fong Yuqing intends to find Zhang Yi. "Yuqing, how could you do this to me? Did you not say that you loathe Zhang Yi the most? Do you remember when you claimed you would be mine?" Fong Yuqing was taken aback by Wang's words. Chapter 52. Exposure of wealth. Zhou Ke extended her hand towards Wang Min naturally. She would not offer her assistance without compensation. Wang Min, understanding the unspoken rules, retrieved a packet of biscuits and handed it to her. Though meager, if rationed, it would suffice for 2 days. Zhou Ke felt a sense of satisfaction and subsequently departed. Once Zhou Ke left, the atmosphere in the room grew unbearably oppressive. The pain from their wounds continued to throb, leaving the 3 men sprawled on the sofa, wrapped tightly in their blankets, unwilling to stir. Zhou Peng gazed at Fong Yuqing on the floor, his eyes filled with profound sorrow. Chapter 53. The neighbor's frenzied pursuit of Zhang Yi. Wang Min promptly stated, "I can assure everyone that these videos were filmed recently." Zhang Yi's household has long been stocked with various supplies, be it food or fuel. Thus, his current life is akin to paradise. Lin Kaining also chimed in, "Indeed, I can attest to that. When he went to the supermarket to purchase items, I was the one who assisted him. Their family later acquired a plethora of goods. Have you all forgotten?" Lin Kaining's words stirred the memories of many. Indeed, at that time, Zhang Yi's household was bustling with activity. Chapter 54. Zhou Ke. What is Zhang Yi's attitude towards those female property owners' messages? He merely perceives them as amusing little compositions, often too indifferent to respond. Of course, there are a few daring ones who directly send him private selfies. Zhang Yi glanced at them casually, lacking any significant interest. Primarily, these women exhibit excessive confidence. Although a few possess decent looks, most are rather unremarkable in appearance. Unlike the female streamers on certain platforms who have honed their skills in captivating movements, these women offer little in terms of visual appeal. Chapter 55. The neighbors target Zhang Yi. After much hesitation, Zhou Ke ultimately acquiesced. Her moral compass and conscience forbade her from descending into the depths of depravity. Yet the neighbor's choice to rob Zhang Yi out of envy struck her as even more reprehensible. Thus, she resolved to assist Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi remarked, "Very well, I must first see your valuable information before providing you with what you desire. From here on, your performance will be scrutinized." Zhu Ke replied, "Understood." She was a woman of kind heart, yet certainly not devoid of intelligence. Chapter 56. The strong assault. Zhang Yi sat quietly at home, awaiting the arrival of his frenzied neighbors. His expression was grave, and before him lay an array of weapons. At that moment, he received a message from Uncle Yu, the doorman. "Xiao Zhang, you must flee. They are coming for you, armed and dangerous." A warmth spread through Zhang Yi's heart. In this world, it was rare to encounter kindness. He chuckled softly, "Uncle Yu, do not worry. I can handle this." Uncle Yu fell silent for a moment, seemingly aware that there was nowhere to escape at this juncture. Chapter 57. Heavy casualties. Observing the crowd outside, chattering incessantly as they devised their strategies, Zhang Yi felt no inclination to aim carefully this time. Since they sought his life, there was no need for him to extend any courtesies. Zhang Yi was no saint. He raised the crossbow in his hand and commenced firing. Soon, Several individuals were struck by his arrows and fell to the ground. It was only then that those outside realized the formidable power of Zhang Yi's weapon. He possessed arms. Caution! The surrounding individuals screamed in terror and hastily attempted to disperse. Chapter 58. Despair. Zhang Yi's residence was besieged by Chen Zhenghao and his companions, who tirelessly labored throughout the morning to dismantle the walls. However, upon removing the layers of plaster and flooring, they were met with an imposing barrier of thick steel plates. The 20-centimeter thick steel proved to be a veritable nightmare for them. With mere human strength at their disposal, the prospect of breaching such a formidable obstruction seemed utterly bleak. The frigid temperatures exacerbated their plight, as they lacked sufficient energy to replenish their waning stamina, hastening their descent into despair. Exhausted, many collapsed onto the ground, utterly spent. Chapter 59. Strike hard, haven't you eaten? Just a thin pane of glass separated the outside world, where individuals braved the biting wind and snow, their faces contorted as they desperately pounded on the windows. Meanwhile, on the other side, Zhang Yi reclined leisurely in a chair, savoring delectable dishes. This stark contrast drove the neighbors outside to the brink of madness with envy. They cursed vehemently, their voices hoarse, eyes aflame with rage. Zhang Yi, just you wait. I will soon put an end to you. Once I shatter this glass, your fate is sealed, you wretched scoundrel, selfish miscreant. Chapter 60. The bounty on Chen Zhenghao. The plaintive cries from outside continued incessantly, with the women bowing so fervently that their foreheads bled, an utterly heartrending scene. Zhang Yi sighed deeply, approached the window, and said, "Please do not carry on in this manner. It pains my heart to witness such suffering." As he spoke, he raised a steaming bowl of noodles. In moments of distress, I find solace in food. Slurping, Zhang Yi devoured the noodles, causing his neighbors to gaze in envy, their mouths watering with desire. Upon hearing this, the wails grew even louder, and the fervor with which they bowed intensified. Chapter 61. Zhou Ku'er could no longer endure the following day. Zhang Yi was startled by the sound of gunfire echoing through the corridor. Bang! Bang! The two shots resonated like the thunderous crack of large firecrackers. It was unmistakably the work of Chen Zhenghao. Evidently, Zhang Yi's word from the previous day had begun to bear fruit. In a state of impending doom, the fear of death gradually waned. The promise of a week's worth of hearty noodles offered an irresistible allure. Zhang Yi activated the surveillance, witnessing the eruption of conflict unfold before his eyes. Chapter 62. A lavish feast for the neighbors. Open the door. Open the door. This is Chen Zhenghao. I wish to exchange residences with you. Hurry, unlock the door, or I shall be compelled to resort to violence. Inside, the young couple huddled together in terror. What shall we do? They intend to seize our home. I fear we may lose even the scant provisions we have left. The wife gazed at her husband with a visage of despair. The husband, a bespectacled clerk, embraced his wife and offered soothing words. Do not fear, my love. All shall be well. If they desire our home, let us relinquish it to them. Chapter 63. Infection. Zhang Yi's ostentatious display of wealth caused the hearts of all the residents in the building to bleed. Now, even the discarded scraps from Zhang Yi's home were considered a delicacy by them. Yet, he would not even spare them that. In the homes of Sun Jichao and others, following their failed assault on Zhang Yi's residence, their hopes of obtaining antibiotics were dashed. Merely 2 days had passed, and the aftereffects began to manifest. The 3 injured individuals experienced an unbearable itch at their wounds. Around the bandages, the bloodstains began to take on an unusual appearance. Chapter 64. The delight of old sick Zhang Yi is willing to accept Zhou Ke, yet she must present a declaration of loyalty. Zhang Yi's requirements are quite straightforward. She must be beneficial, pose no threat, and, most importantly, she cannot be overly benevolent. The first 2 conditions are within Zhang Yi's control. However, he is curious to ascertain whether Zhou Ke can be resolute in critical moments. Thus, he assigns her a task. Zhou Ke has yet to respond to Zhang Yi, clearly grappling with her decision. Zhang Yi remains unhurried, for time is on his side. Should Zhou Ke fail to pass this test? Chapter 65. Zhou Kuer's resolution, Zhou Peng forcefully tore off Fang Yuqing's clothing, heedless of the frigid temperature that plummeted to over 60 degrees below zero. Fang Yuqing lay there, devoid of the strength to resist, her eyes vacant. However, as Zhou Peng removed his trousers, he was confronted with a harsh reality. He found himself utterly incapable of rising. It was no joke. The extreme cold of minus 70 degrees, coupled with his abysmal physical condition, rendered him ineffective. Even if given chance, he would be of no use. Get up. You must get up. Zhou Peng anxiously resorted to numerous methods, yet none bore fruit. It seemed that he was completely incapacitated. Chapter 66. The token of loyalty. Zhang Yi stood upon the balcony, his body leaning against the window frame, poised to retreat to the safety of his room at the slightest hint of danger. Chen Zhenghao and his underlings occupied the adjacent balcony, appearing utterly incapacitated. However, Zhang Yi harbored doubts about their true state. What if this was a ruse orchestrated by them and Zhou Kuer to ensnare him? It was entirely plausible that as soon as he ventured forth, they would rise and eliminate him. Moreover, a gap of several centimeters separated the two balconies, with a stainless steel railing standing as the sole barrier. Chapter 67. Proving your innocuousness. The room was unbearably warm. Zhou Kuer felt as though she were being roasted in an oven while clad in her down jacket, a most uncomfortable sensation. Ignoring the gun that Zhang Yijing aimed at her, she hastily shed the thick garment in an effort to cool herself. She inhaled deeply, gasping for air. The tears welling in her eyes betrayed the tumult of emotions surging within her. It was so warm, too warm. Such a comfortable indoor temperature was truly the environment suitable for human existence, a feeling she had not experienced in far too long. Chapter 68. All settled today. Zhou Kuer observed Zhang Yi's lingering wariness towards her and could not help but reflect. No wonder he managed to navigate the apocalypse with such ease. Please, take a seat. Zhang Yi gestured towards a sofa beside him, his firearm now seemingly in hand. Zhou Kuer obediently settled herself on the sofa. 2 meters away from Zhang Yi, her hands neatly folded upon her knees, resembling a well-behaved child. Listen closely. The reason I have allowed you to reside here is that you hold some value for me. However, you must always bear in mind that this is my home, and you are permitted to stay here. Chapter 69. A good night's sleep this night was destined to be exceedingly long. Zhou Kuer had secured the warm room she had long desired. At last, she could comfortably enjoy a peaceful slumber for the first time since the onset of the apocalypse. Zhang Yi locked the door from the outside, keeping the sole key securely in his possession. Business is business. Fundamental principles must be upheld. Even though Zhang Yi recognized Zhou Kuer as a kind-hearted individual, allowing her entry and ensuring her survival was already an act of great mercy. For the foreseeable future, he could not afford to lower his guard against her. Chapter 70. Deterrence. Zhou Kuer raised the baseball bat in her hand, gazing at the enormous ice block before her. Gritting her teeth, she resolutely brought the bat down with force. After all, as a woman trained in medicine, her aversion to corpses was not overly pronounced. With a sharp crack, the ice block shattered in response. The recoil from the impact sent a jolt of pain through her hand, causing her to exclaim and drop the bat. Zhou Kuer furrowed her brows slightly, massaging her palm. How solid it is! Before Zhang Yi could utter a word, she stepped into the room, and when she returned, her hands were already filled with. Chapter 71. Do not contact me. I fear she might misunderstand. Zhang Yi felt a flicker of happiness and warmth at Zhou Kuer's proactive approach. Although he was not easily swayed by women, he too yearned for tenderness and affection. There was no doubt that Zhou Kuer was a beauty, and it was entirely reasonable for her to wield such an enchanting influence over him. He relished the intimacy of her advances. A mischievous thought crept into Zhang Yi's mind. If Fang Yuqing were to witness the closeness between him and Zhou Kuer, would she be driven to madness? With this thought, Zhang Yi immediately. Chapter 72. Uncle Judah borrows medicine. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yi cast a glance at her. Jukai, fearing that Zhang Yi would view her as overly virtuous, hurriedly explained, at that time, the snow disaster had just begun, and I thought it would pass swiftly. Zhang Yi smiled dismissively, placing his phone on the table and intertwining his fingers. That is not the issue. The provisions you provided should have been exhausted by now. What has sustained you until this moment? Zhou Ke, still gnawing on a piece of rib, quietly set it back in her bowl upon hearing Zhang Yi's words. Lin Xiaohu, due to his absence. Chapter 73. The Cunning Mother. After a while, Zhang Yi heard a knock at the door, accompanied by the voice of Uncle Yu. Zhang Yi, it's you, Jiguang. Are you at home? Habitually, he glanced at the surveillance monitor to check outside. However, his brow soon furrowed in concern, for it was not only Uncle Yu standing at the entrance, but also a woman cradling a child in her arms. Though she was bundled in a thick down coat, Zhang Yi recognized her as the mother, Xiaomei. What could her purpose be? Chapter 74. Night raid on Zhang Yi's house. Uncle Yu returned home with Xiaomei and the child. After closing the door, he wore a displeased expression and remarked, "What on earth did you just say? How could you ask someone to help you look after the child? The outside world is so chaotic. One cannot discern whether others are human or ghost. The fact that he can provide medicine for the child indicates that he is a trustworthy individual. How could you possibly overstep your bounds like this?" Xiaomei sat on the bed holding the child, feeding him medicine while loosening her clothing to nurse him, ensuring the medication went down smoothly. She refrained from arguing with Uncle Yu. Chapter 75. The Power of White Phosphorus. Zhang Yi reacted with remarkable swiftness. Leaping from his bed, clad only in his pajamas, he promptly retrieved a handgun from another dimension, disengaging the safety before gripping it firmly in his hand. He activated his mobile device to scrutinize the external surveillance footage. The living room appeared to be unharmed. However, in the room of Zhou Ke, she exhibited a visage of sheer terror, tightly enveloped in her blanket, her head cradled in her arms as she cowered in the corner. With the interior of the house secure, Zhang Yi felt a wave of relief wash over him. He then turned his attention back to the surveillance, peering outside. It was at that moment he discerned the presence of a dozen or so furtive figures lurking about. Chapter 76. The Alliance of House 26. Zhang Yi recounted the recent events to Zhou Ke. It was the workers from the neighboring House 26. She exclaimed, "There is a newly developed neighborhood nearby, leading many laborers to rent accommodations in the vicinity." Zhou Ke expressed her curiosity. "Our community is considered mid to high-end. Do they truly spend that much?" Zhang Yi replied, "They cram 10 people into a single room. How expensive can it really be?" Zhou Ke responded with a thoughtful "oh," nodding in agreement. However, her expression soon shifted to one of gravity. In that case, Chapter 77. Zhang Yi, if you do not come out, I shall harm your neighbor. Thanks to Uncle Yu's introduction, Zhang Yi gained a glimpse into the nature of those individuals. This group of workers is employed under a construction company known as Tianhe Group. They are informal laborers, contracted through a foreman, and they work under his supervision. However, they boast of being employees of Tianhe Group to enhance their image. Consequently, they refer to themselves as the Tianhe Gang, with the leader being the lean, short man named Huang Tianfang. Zhang Yi, do you have any plans concerning them? If you require my assistance, do not hesitate to call upon me. Chapter 78. Neighbors seek protection. Huang Tianfang, in his misguided cleverness, had taken the lives of 25 individuals, believing this would draw out Zhang Yi. Were this a film featuring a saintly protagonist, one could certainly expect them to emerge and engage Huang Tianfang in dialogue. Unfortunately for him, Zhang Yi felt no remorse. Rather, he was filled with delight. His intention was to incite Huang Tianfang to claim more victims among the neighbors, thereby instilling a sense of panic. Indeed, merely 2 days had passed before the neighbors could no longer endure the situation. They witnessed Huang Tian. Chapter 79. Subduing neighbors as cannon fodder. Zhang Yi observed the conversations within the group. Uncle Yu turned to send a private message to Zhang Yi, inquiring, "What should we do now?" Zhang Yi replied, "The time is nearly ripe. When the moment arrives, I need you to lend your support, ensuring that this group adheres to my directives." He intended to employ both persuasion and intimidation, for their compliance would guarantee the safety of our building in the future. As for the safety of the neighbors, Zhang Yi was uncertain. However, he was assured that his own security would undoubtedly increase. Furthermore, many of these neighbors would be regarded as expendable assets, sent to the front lines by Zhang Yi himself. Chapter 80. snowmobile, the neighbors appeared as though they had encountered a savior. Even those whose spirits had dimmed, wrapped in blankets at home, waiting for the inevitable, now sparkled with renewed hope in their eyes. Zhang-yi, can you truly venture out to gather supplies? They implored. If that is the case, we might just survive. Though the blizzard has sealed off the city, the abundance of resources produced by our society over the past few decades is indeed sufficient for us to endure. Zhang-yi, I am profoundly touched by your willingness. Despite the way we treated you initially, you now Chapter 81. The armory of the police station in the desolate city of Tianhai. A heavy blanket of snow enveloped everything. From a lofty vantage point, one could discern only the faint silhouettes of towering buildings, with the rest obscured by the pristine white snow. Zhang-yi, astride a snowmobile, raced swiftly across the snowy expanse. After nearly a month of self-imposed isolation at home, this was his first exhilarating venture outdoors. The wind howled past his ears, and the sensation was indescribably liberating. Zhang-yi couldn't help but let out a series of joyous whoops. The raucous sound of the snowmobile was particularly attention-grabbing. Chapter 82. A meal for the neighbors. Zhang-yi arrived at the Wanda Plaza located in the Economic Development Zone. Upon his arrival, he could see nothing but a roof overhead. Employing the same method, he shattered the glass above and, using climbing ropes, deftly maneuvered himself inside. Once within the plaza, faint traces of its former splendor lingered in the air. The circular shopping center featured store after store, each displaying exquisite merchandise. Lavish clothing, footwear, and various household items, once of great value, were now worthless and could be taken without hesitation. Zhang-yi selected a few useful items. Chapter 83. The invader. Zhang-yi remarked with a hint of resignation. Indeed, it is exceedingly challenging to procure supplies from the outside. Upon venturing forth, I scoured every supermarket and mall that I could recall in the vicinity. To my dismay, all the surrounding establishments have been thoroughly looted, leaving nothing behind. Nevertheless, I refused to succumb to despair. I understood that everyone was relying on me. To ensure that all could be well fed, I resolved to scour the entirety of Tianhai City for sustenance to bring back for everyone. Reluctantly, I had no choice but to wander through the city, and after considerable effort, I managed to acquire these few items from a mall. Zhang-yi handed over 2 bags to Chapter 84. Zhang-yi, do not nurture the useless. Zhang-yi regarded his neighbors with a sense of satisfaction, nodding approvingly. Only after having taken lives could these neighbors qualify as competent vanguards and expendable pawns. This would facilitate his dealings with assaults from other apartment blocks in the future. The price he needed to pay was merely a trifling amount of worthless food and an array of empty promises. Clap, clap, clap. Zhang-yi chuckled as he applauded. Well done. Did you see that? As long as we stand united, what is there to fear from these individuals? Chapter 85. Humiliation of the White Lotus at last. The provisions had been distributed. Zhang-yi instructed Zhou Ke to stow away the remaining supplies. However, at that moment, a voice pierced through the crowd, filled with urgency. Brother Zhang-yi, I haven't received anything yet. I still haven't. The voice belonged to Fang Yuqing. She had always believed that Zhang-yi would grant her special consideration, providing her with the most food. Yet, after waiting in vain for what felt like an eternity, her expectations remained unfulfilled. Beside her, Lin Kainin echoed her anxiety, exclaiming, Brother Zhang-yi. Chapter 86. The sniper. After Zhang-yi concluded his remarks, the neighbors fell into deep contemplation regarding the pros and cons of the situation. One individual inquired, Zhang-yi, while it is understandable that you and Zhou Ke are exempt from duty, why is Uncle Yu also spared from this obligation? Surely, he is the most formidable fighter. Zhang-yi fixed his gaze upon him and articulated, word by word, precisely because Uncle Yu is a pivotal asset in our strength. It is imperative that he conserves his energy and awaits the critical moment to engage in battle. Do you comprehend? Though this rationale appeared somewhat tenuous, none dared to challenge Zhang-yi's assertion. In truth, Zhang-yi's underlying intention was to ensure Uncle Yu's safety. Chapter 87. The Revenge of the Tianhe Gang. Zhang-yi relished the thrill of wielding a sniper rifle, keenly observing the surroundings of the neighborhood through the scope. As night enveloped the area, The residences lay shrouded in darkness, devoid of electricity. However, the snow-covered ground cast a luminous white glow, allowing for a faint glimpse of the scenery. Suddenly, Zhang Yi's gaze sharpened. As he directed his attention towards the garage in the distance, he noticed two small black figures moving stealthily. The garage, there were people. It appeared they were headed straight for my snowmobile. Chapter 88, Precision Shooting. A perfect hit. When a man encounters a beautiful woman, his first impulse is often to engage in profound conversation with her. Similarly, upon acquiring an exceptional weapon, one cannot help but desire to test its formidable capabilities. This instinct is ingrained in our very nature. Even as children, we would cherish a fine piece of bamboo found by the roadside, wielding it as if it were a treasured sword. In this instance, Zhang Yi has come into possession of a sniper rifle, an object so rare that it remains a distant dream for the average citizen in Huagua, let alone to envision using it against another. The urge to ascertain its efficacy is irresistible. Zhang Yi retrieves the sniper rifle from an alternate dimension and stands poised. Chapter 89, Warehouse District. Zhang Yi cast a glance at her, a cheerful smile gracing his lips as he replied, "Indeed." He took a mouthful of noodles, noting that Zhou Ke's culinary skills were merely average. Fortunately, noodles were a dish not particularly difficult to prepare. "I found it when I went out. It's a sniper rifle." Zhang Yi's tone was notably calm. Excitement flickered in Zhou Ke's beautiful eyes. "A sniper rifle? Are you proficient in its use?" "Not only am I proficient, but I excel at it," Zhang Yi asserted, gesturing towards the window. "Last night, I dispatched 7 individuals with 7 bullets. Chapter 90. The gas station. Zhang Yi possessed an intimate familiarity with this region. Within the entire Tianhai city, hundreds of warehouses belonging to various conglomerates were concentrated here, both large and small. If he could consolidate all the resources, it would not only suffice for his own needs, but could easily sustain thousands of people. However, the pressing concern remained whether those resources still existed. Equipped with a handgun and a crowbar, Zhang Yi approached the nearby Duran Fa warehouse to investigate. With the crowbar in hand, he forcefully shattered the window from the top. Peering inside, he was met with the sight of the expansive factory, which at that moment. Chapter 91. A new path. Discover. The operation of the excavator is relatively straightforward, primarily involving 2 thrust levers and a control stick for the bucket. Zhang Yi located the fuel tank and retrieved a barrel of diesel from the alternate dimension, pouring it into the tank. He then climbed into the control room and turned the key. With a rumble, the machine roared to life. Fortunately, the low temperatures did not significantly affect the new machinery, allowing the excavator to function properly. Zhang Yi maneuvered the excavator, beginning to push the snow aside. Initially, his speed was somewhat sluggish, but gradually it picked up momentum. Chapter 92. If you do not save my grandson, you shall perish. After the distribution of food, Lin Caning stirred up trouble once more, only to be severely beaten by Jiang Lei and Li Chengbin, 2 henchmen of Zhang Yi. Subsequently, Zhang Yi instructed them to return to their respective places. Zhu Kai, walking alongside him, gently linked her arm with his and whispered, "The atmosphere in the community seems rather off today." Zhang Yi silently withdrew his arm and inquired with indifference, "Oh, what is happening?" Zhou Ke was momentarily taken aback, then realized that Zhang Yi preferred not to be constrained by her touch. While it was tolerable at home, outside. Zhang Yi Tururi. Chapter 93. The one at fault is yourself. Zhang Yi finally unraveled the sequence of events. "Ah, so that is how you perceive it." He nodded in acknowledgement. "However, is there not some misunderstanding regarding this matter?" He lowered his gaze to Aunt Lin, meeting her gaze filled with animosity. Then, in a hushed tone, Zhang Yi softly remarked, "In truth, I am a person who appears tough on the outside yet possesses a tender heart. How could I possibly bear to witness a child suffer to such an extent? Thus, I made a visit to your home to deliver medicine." Chapter 94. After Chunling Yu, Zhang Yi and Zhou Ke returned to their room. They removed their cold weather gear and sank into the sofa, exclaiming in frustration, "That wretched mad woman." He sprawled out languidly on the couch. Zhou Ke entered the bathroom, and after a brief moment, emerged with a basin of warm water. With a gentle smile, she knelt before Zhang Yi, assisting him in removing his cotton socks and tenderly washed his feet. She softly inquired, "Were you startled just now?" Leaning back against the sofa, Zhang Yi replied languidly, "It wasn't too alarming. Ever since the apocalypse, I have grown accustomed to anything." Chapter 95. On cooperation and attitude, Zhang Yi first delivered a stern warning to Chun Lingyu, making it clear that he was not to be trifled with. Chun Lingyu paced back and forth in the room, not out of anxiety, but rather to fend off the biting cold. A few extra steps would provide some warmth. She was clad in numerous layers of clothing, yet made a concerted effort to appear stylish, even donning an outer coat adorned with a fox fur collar. Upon receiving Zhang Yi's frosty message, she inhaled sharply, murmuring to herself, "Truly a formidable individual. I must not let my guard down." Chapter 96. Should they all be killed? After a period of contemplation, Zhang Yi arrived at a satisfactory conclusion. He determined that as long as he remained steadfast within Building 25, utilizing his firepower and the strength of his safe house, even if the inhabitants of the other 29 buildings united against him, they would be unable to pose a threat. In essence, given the current dire scarcity of food and the extreme cold, even stepping outside into the biting wind for a brief moment was a significant ordeal. The collective strength of 20 individuals could not match what one person could achieve in better times. My personal safety is assured. If necessary, I come on my motorcycle and break free. Chapter 97. The attitude of each building in the community listening to Zhang Yi's murmurs. Zhou Ku'er felt a chill run down her spine. At that moment, the entire community remained oblivious, all dancing precariously on the brink of hell. Life or death rested solely upon Zhang Yi's whims. Fortunately, she felt immense relief for having chosen to follow him. Suddenly, Zhang Yi turned to Zhou, patting the sofa beside him. "Come here," he beckoned. Zhou Ku'er approached and took a seat beside him. The temperature in the room was quite high thus. Chapter 98. Establishing authority, Zhang Yi resolved to remain observant, fully aware that certain individuals would inevitably succumb to their impatience and seek to take action against him. Consequently, he decided to exercise heightened vigilance regarding his safety in the forthcoming days. He donned a police helmet for head protection and wore a bulletproof vest for his torso. However, as he glanced down at his legs, a frown creased his brow. While he was safeguarded by the vest, he lacked protective trousers. After a moment of contemplation, an idea struck him. He retrieved a bulletproof garment from an alternate dimension and handed it over. Chapter 99. Ambush Zhang. He inquired with concern. "Are you all right?" Jiang Lei was taken aback by Zhang Yi's thoughtful inquiry regarding his well-being and promptly replied, "It was just a minor scrape. I'm fine." Zhang Yi then expressed with a tone of indignation, "The scoundrels of the Heavenly Alliance have nearly injured one of my finest generals." He continued, "Jiang Lei, you need not report for duty tomorrow. Take the time to rest." Subsequently, he addressed the crowd. "Everyone performed admirably this evening. Tomorrow, we shall reward valor. All who participated in the assault on the Heavenly Alliance will receive no less than double rations." Chapter 100. A swift execution. After Zhang Yi's motorcycle passed over the man, he glanced back. Despite the snow cushioning his fall, the burden of over 400 kilograms pressing down upon him caused him to spit blood. Zhang Yi, with a swift motion, fired a shot, bringing an end to the man's suffering. He then continued to pursue, slowly, driven by a desire to uncover the origins of these assailants. If they sought to harm him, they would undoubtedly have to pay the price. The direction in which the few individuals fled bore a striking resemblance to the territory of the Wolf Gang, known as 21. Chapter 101. Disobedience leads to death. Upon hearing such a voice, Zhang Yi let out a cold, mocking laugh. His tone compelled those present to promptly silence themselves. "Have the daily provisions bestowed upon you recently emboldened your spirits?" Zhang Yi's gaze swept across the crowd, eventually resting on Guo Dahai, the rotund man, resembling a balding Mediterranean, instinctively recoiled a couple of steps. "When I initially assumed the role of building supervisor, I made it unequivocally clear that everyone must adhere to my commands." A sinister smile crept across his face. "Alas, has it only been a few days and you have already forgotten?" Chapter 102. Intelligence on weapons. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu strolled leisurely outside, casually gathering supplies. In the course of their conversation, They broached the current situation within the community. Uncle Yu inquired of Zhang Yi, "It seems that someone is contemplating taking action against you. They are envious of the snowmobile you possess. I fear that matters may soon become more complicated. Do you have any plans?" It was a rare occasion for Zhang Yi to engage in a conversation with Uncle Yu. Upon hearing the question, Zhang Yi responded with a wry smile. "You ask me? I was just about to ask you.